number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Friday, the 9th of July. Good morning, I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, a cloudy sky, 15 degrees. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Breaking news from the Business Centre. Statistics Canada says the Canadian economy added 230,700 jobs last month as restrictions put in place to slow the pandemic were rolled back across the country. The gain came as the number of part-time positions rose by more than 263,000, bringing it basically back to pre-pandemic levels. But the number of full-time jobs fell to just over 33,000. The Statistics Canada says the part-time gains were driven by jumps in jobs in the hard-hit retail and food services sectors and concentrated among young people. The unemployment rate fell to 7.8% for the month, compared with 8.2% in May. Stay with City News for the latest on this developing story. For the first time in about a year, Ottawa's hospitals have zero COVID-19 patients. Our Chris Curries reports it's a sign of how steeply COVID-19 case totals have plunged in recent weeks.
The Ottawa Hospital's three campuses, Mulford Hospital and the Queensway Carleton, reporting no patients with active cases of COVID-19. Now, just over 2 months ago, on May 3rd, there were 82 patients with COVID-19 spread across the Ottawa Hospital's General, Civic and Riverside campuses, the highest total at any time during the pandemic. The last time they had no active cases was in July of last year. While community transmission not at zero, the numbers are, quote, a testament to the progress that the community has made in reducing the spread of the virus. The hospitals are all asking everyone to stay safe, continue masking up and distancing, and still get vaccinated. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time 9:02. The new National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations says change is happening and colonial policies will be kicked to the curb. Roseanne Archibald of Ontario was named the new National Chief last night after her opponent conceded before the sixth round of voting. Archibald's been involved in First Nations politics for more than 3 decades. She's the first woman to serve as National Chief. She says the recent discoveries of hundreds of unmarked graves at former residential school sites has served as a wake-up call that settler Canadians have benefited from colonial practices, and Indigenous people have been the target of genocide. Archibald has a news conference scheduled in about an hour from now. Do not call 911 if you see a bunch of police running around Rideau Hall today. The RCMP says it is conducting a training exercise on the grounds of Rideau Hall this morning. The National Division of the RCMP says Mounties train regularly on various situations and scenarios. So again, police activity around Rideau Hall this morning is part of a training exercise. Residents of Lytton, BC will board a bus today and finally get to see what is left of their village. It's been more than a week since a wildfire swept into the area, giving everyone just minutes to get out. BC Premier John Horgan plans to ask the federal government to send in the army to help clear fire danger zones in an effort to prevent future wildfires. As Elsa moves into New England this afternoon, it may bring the threat of tornadoes. ABC News senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is in Rhode Island.
It's been over 12 years since this area has seen a tropical storm. They've shut down the high-speed ferry service to the Block Island, to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. A lot of tourists still in town, obviously from the 4th of July holiday weekend, but this is not a beach day by any means. They've stationed power crews up and down the coast in Hyannis in anticipation of power outages, and with winds already gusting at just over 70 miles an hour.
This morning, Elsa was just east of Atlantic City, New Jersey, on a path taking it over Atlantic Canada by tonight and into tomorrow. A much better weather picture around here. Let's get the latest from weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
Sun and cloud this Friday for Smiths Falls. Daytime highs near 23 degrees. Really comfortable weather this afternoon and into the evening. Great patio weather. Will be around 20 degrees for the evening, and overnight we fall to near 13 degrees for Smiths Falls. So a little bit cool when you wake up Saturday, but gorgeous conditions. Sun and cloud through the day, and highs near about 25 degrees for Smiths Falls. Sun and cloud Sunday and warming up. Highs near 27. Today, your daytime high 23.
Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, a cloudy sky, 15 degrees. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Inform your opinion.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Friday. We made it. All my friends are back on the radio with me today. Coming up in just a few minutes, it's the legendary Lowell Green, Hall of Fame broadcaster and best-selling author. It's been 2 or 3 weeks since we've been together here on a Friday morning, so I'm looking forward to getting caught up with him after the 9:30 news. Bourque is back. Pierre Bourque, Newswatch, go over a week's worth of headlines. Steve Warne will join us from the Steve Warne Project and the Sens Nation podcast. We said goodbye to the hockey season this week. Wasn't meant to be for the Habs. Red Blacks will be back in action soon enough. There's the Wimbledon semifinals this morning featuring a Canadian, and the finals of Euro 2020, even though it's 2021, England and Italy on Sunday. I'm not the biggest soccer fan, but I like the big games. So I'll set some time aside on the weekend to watch that. I'm still getting used to the idea of seeing 60,000 screaming fans in a stadium watching a sporting event. Meantime, the Blue Jays aren't even allowed to play at Rogers Centre in Toronto with no fans in the stands. Queen's Park Weekend Review with our MPPs and Anthony Monte back with us today. He is in charge of the city's vaccination program. Half the eligible population fully vaccinated now, and we'll get the very latest on him. Dr. Etches says the goal has to be 90% fully vaccinated before we can even think of putting away our masks. And I think, that's... It's part of the story to watch, where we go from here. We're being super cautious in Ontario. Some may think rightly so, given the variants. Others are saying we're overly cautious. I will leave that up to you. But, like I said, 60,000 fans at Wembley Stadium for the soccer game this week, and not a mask to be seen anywhere. Calgary Stampede underway. I've never been to the Calgary Stampede. You ever been to the Calgary Stampede, Damon?
No, I haven't made it out there yet.
Jen's been to the Calgary Stampede. It's one of those things, though. It's on my bucket list. They call it the greatest show on earth.
Oh, yeah.
So, BC ended the mandatory mask mandate on Canada Day. No sign of that happening in Ottawa, though. And now one of the top health advisors to Premier Ford told one of the Toronto news networks yesterday that we are, quote, absolutely not ready. Absolutely not ready to move to step 3 of the province's reopening plan. We were supposed to move to step 3 a week from next Tuesday. And when it comes to the province's vaccination rates, you could make a good case that we should be in step 3 right now. We shouldn't even be waiting another week and a half. I don't know. I think it's legit for Ontarians to feel like they're being left behind. But they say Delta, Delta, Delta. It's all about the Delta variant. But there are no active COVID cases in any Ottawa hospital this morning. Isn't that great news? Isn't that great news? Not a single case. So, what gives? We can get into that this morning. You know what? We can talk about whatever you want to talk about this morning during our Talk Back Hour. Because on Fridays, we do the Friday free-for-all. So we don't pick the topics. You pick the topics. We don't pick the topics. We call it a free-for-all. We usually prefer stuff that's in the news, but it doesn't have to be in the news. If it's bugging you, bothering you, driving you a little batty, if you need an ear to bend, a shoulder to cry on, I'm your guy. We do that between 10 and 11 o'clock at 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. It's usually pretty busy. And the job numbers are out from StatScan. Now, the job numbers are volatile month to month because, we close things down and people lose their jobs, and then we open things up, and it looks like jobs are being created, so you have to dig a little deeper into the numbers. And we're going to do that this morning. After the 11 o'clock news, Pierre Poilievre is going to join us, Conservative MP. Jobs critic for the Conservatives. The big top-line number looks like a good number. 230,000 jobs created last month, and that's good. The unemployment rate drops to 7.8%. That's also good. The not so good is that all the job creation was in part-time jobs for young people. The not so good is that the number of Canadians considered to be long-term unemployed, meaning they've been unemployed for more than 6 months, is stuck. It's not moving. It hasn't changed at all. And it's 166% higher, according to StatScan this morning, 166% higher than it was when the pandemic first started. People unemployed for more than 6 months. They go long-term unemployed. And just one other footnote. You know, the Prime Minister was in Calgary this week. Amid all the election speculation, take some shots at Jason Kenney. Fair enough, all's fair in love and war. But you know, one of the beefs in Alberta is the equalization program. Kenney wants to have a referendum on equalization. It's been Jason Kenney versus Justin Trudeau on equalization. So, I'm just going from StatScan's jobless report today, okay? In Quebec, you know, Quebec is supposed to be the great have-not province, right? In fact, under equalization, I guess you could make the case Quebec is just the poorest of the poor and the worst of all the have-not provinces. Well, the unemployment rate, according to StatScan this morning, in the province of Quebec is 6.3%, and Quebec gets $13 billion in equalization. In Alberta, the economy has been in a recession for 5 years. The unemployment rate this morning is 9.3%. Alberta, in the last 5 years, hasn't received a penny in equalization. Oh, doesn't that sound fair? Lowell Green next. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
Ottawa Markets was created by the City of Ottawa to help rejuvenate the outdoor markets program in Byward and Wellington West, where we have the Parkdale Market. And so we set to work on bringing in the right team with the right experience and reaching out to local vendors and local farmers, because we knew when we did a survey of our customers that was the one thing that was really important to them, both at Byward and in Parkdale, is to start bringing back that local product. And that's what you can see behind us here at the York Street Farmers Market. We put in place a Farmers First policy, which means that we will deal with farmers from the region first. And we're going to give them priority in terms of placement. They're going to have reduced fees in coming to the market. We've also made it free for any farm that's been in operation for under 2 years. The market also put in place a BIPOC initiative, which is a Black, Indigenous, and Peoples of Color initiative, which provides grants and support opportunities for folks from those communities to come on out to the market to reduce systemic barriers that have existed. As a farmer's market, we can have a variety of vendors here, from an artisan to a microprocessor who's taking local ingredients and putting them into a product in a kitchen and selling that, to breweries and distilleries this year, which were changes that the province put in place, which allowed us to bring in a few of those vendors as well, which I think is a nice surprise for people sometimes at 9 in the morning after a pandemic. But it's been going really well, and you know, some of the breweries have been pretty appreciative, because for them, whether it just be doing delivery or curbside pickup, it gives them an opportunity to come back out and talk with their customer and talk about, you know, what makes their product so special. Throughout the market, the health and safety protocols that you're going to see, masks are still required. That is obviously the case, and you'll see a number of signs noting that around the area. We've got a number of hand sanitizer units, I call them droids, throughout the area that you can sort of just grab a pump or a squeeze wherever you go. But what we've also had to do is reduce the number of vendor spaces we have in the market by 50%. This ensures that we can guarantee that our vendors are going to have that distance, that we can, you know, have a little bit better flow around the market. But what we also did was, as I said, we created the York Street Farmers Market, which is just microprocessors and local producers only, and that's on Saturdays. In Parkdale, we launched the night market, which is bringing a lot of the same content, but in the evening, and residents are sort of spilling out into the park. So we're looking at what we're doing as trying to support, create, and enhance public space for the residents of the city. It's been great. You know, the community, which is what this market is here for, and then as tourism comes back, obviously we'll welcome all visitors. But the response has been really great. The community's come on out, they're speaking with their wallets and their dollars, which obviously at the end of the day, we want a great experience, but it needs to be a valuable economic opportunity for the vendors who are coming out.
A pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City City News,
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
And he's the one and only, and some say one too many, Lowell Green. Good morning.
Yes, thank you very much. I really love your introductions. Listen, talking about Alberta and Quebec, not only will Quebec get $13.1 billion in equalization, so-called equalization payments this year, but in the next 5 years, it will get another $50 to $60 billion, while Alberta will get nothing. You remember, it was about a year and a half ago, the Prime Minister, without notifying any of the provinces, signed another equalization deal for a 6-year period, which gives Quebec about $60 billion over the 6 years. It's quite astonishing. Yeah. In the meantime, Alberta, as you say, gets absolutely nothing, even though it's
been in recession for 5 years, Lowell Green.
Pardon?
It's been in recession for 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know why it's been in recession? Because our Prime Minister, our beloved Prime Minister, pretty well shut down the number one industry, not only in Alberta, but almost the number one industry in Canada. Beautiful.
Yeah.
So in the next 5 years, $13.1 billion Quebec gets this year, even though it's got a booming economy. Alberta gets absolutely nothing. Saskatchewan gets nothing. I think Ontario gets about $1 billion or something. But in the next 5 years, more than $50 billion will be sucked primarily out of Alberta and Saskatchewan and sent to Quebec. And then you wonder why they're a little bit upset in the province of Alberta. They're having a referendum, as you know, as to whether they should renegotiate. And you can just imagine the way the vote's going to go on that. I would think, about 85% are going to vote in favor of renegotiation. The problem is whether, in fact, the federal government, with Trudeau at the head, will renegotiate is another question. In all probability, they won't do so. It's quite astonishing.
Yeah, one of the things we talked about yesterday on our program was I've been doing these election questions. Where are you on issues that may come up on the election? And I went back to, what about this idea of Energy East? And obviously there's a lot of support among my audience anyway for an Energy East pipeline. But also this idea of a corridor, that there should be a corridor. Because a lot of the rights of way are already there for rail infrastructure and phone infrastructure and these sorts of things. I was listening to an interview that someone did recently with former finance minister in the province of Newfoundland and Labrador. Quebec is not just a problem child when it comes to pipelines, say going east-west. It's also not cooperative when it comes to another. Have-not province that gets nothing in equalization, Newfoundland and Labrador. Newfoundland and Labrador has invested billions and billions and billions of dollars into its own hydroelectric infrastructure that it would love to sell to Canadians in the West. Green, renewable energy. But, for decades now, Quebec has said, sorry, Newfoundland, but your electricity is not going to make it to Ontario because you're never going to have your electricity going through Hydro-Quebec's wires. End of story.
This has been a bone of contention for many years.
Oh, decades.
No question about it. On the issue of vaccinations and whether we should go to stage 3, I'm beginning to think that we are being overcautious here. I mean, it's great news this morning that not a single incidence of a new case of COVID exists in any of our hospitals. This is great news. There's no question, and no question that vaccines are mainly attributable here. Although I think we've also behaved ourselves very well. I'm to be honest with you, I've been around a number of clinics. I had to give blood a couple of days ago. Really impressed with all the precautions that are being taken everywhere. When I went to give blood, for example, I had to go in and check in, and we could only have 7 people in the waiting room, so I had to go outside and stand outside and so forth. This, to me, I'm very impressed, and the results are there, but we're not being rewarded for these results. I think the time has come that whether we could loosen up a little bit. At the very least, I don't see why the Blue Jays can't come here and play in Rogers. I mean, look, we had the Tampa Bay hockey team come to Montreal. I don't understand why the Blue Jays can't come to Toronto.
Doesn't make any sense.
I think that we're being overcautious, no question. Okay. But I want to point out.
Let me ask you something. When was the last time you ate inside a restaurant dining room?
Oh, Oh, golly, I couldn't agree with you more. It's been a long, long time. And once again, I don't understand why restaurants, I mean, in this city at least, the restaurants, when they were allowed to be open, they did it right. The tables were well spaced. There were, in many cases, shields between them. We used to go to a restaurant and they took my temperature every time I went in, and we had to give our name. I don't understand why we can't go inside a restaurant. I really don't. To me, the restaurant should be open now. They should have been opened a couple of weeks ago. Okay. Time to loosen up, Doug Ford. I'm contacting the office again today for whatever it's worth and saying, listen, come on, it's ridiculous. We should be loosening up at least a little bit. You know what? People have learned to be careful. They're doing what's right. And so if we can go into a restaurant and have our tables properly spaced, we wear masks when we walk in and we walk out, etc., I don't see why those restaurants should be penalized. Okay. But I just want to get back to this, the whole... We're praising ourselves, and to a degree rightly so. They say that 70% of Ottawa residents now have at least one shot. That's a very good number, but that means that because there's about 1 million people here, that means that there are about 300,000 people in this city who have not as yet even received one bloody shot. Now, about half of those, they tell us, would be kids under the age of 12 not eligible. But that still leaves about 150,000 adults who have not had one single shot in this city.
Well, maybe that's the 150,000. If they haven't had a shot by now, there's no excuse. Okay, there's no excuse.
That's right. Absolutely.
So, No, is that the hesitant? Is that the anti-vaxxers? What's going on there, right? So
150,000. I mean, that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And you're right. I mean, by now everybody must understand that the only way out of this terrible dilemma is vaccination. I mean, we see it around the world. There's a very interesting stat come out of Maryland, as a matter of fact, that not one single death in the state of Maryland occurred in people who had been vaccinated, even with one shot. Every single death in Maryland, I guess that must be the only state that's done this, every single death in the state of Maryland from COVID was with people who had not been vaccinated. The facts are there everywhere. These deniers, these people who claim, it's etc. This is absolute nonsense. The evidence is everywhere. It's not just anecdotal. It's there. It's in the statistics. It's in the science. It's all around you. It's in the city. For God's sake, we have about 50% of people fully vaccinated, 70% at least one shot. And as a consequence, what do we have? Not a single case of new COVID in any of our hospitals. For God's sake, you people, 150,000 people, that means some of your neighbors right around you, they haven't even had a single shot yet. Craziness.
Okay, I want to ask you for your thoughts on this protest that happened last weekend about the Civic Hospital. I mean, it's an issue that we've been covering together since it first all began, but you're very passionate about it. I want to get your take on what you think is
I'm glad you raised this. Yeah. Here is Clive Doucette, God rest him. Oh, my God. And he's raising hell about this new location down near Dow's Lake for the Civic Hospital. Well, I agree with him. It's a stupid decision, a pure political decision. But that's apparently the decision that's been made. And now he's protesting this. He claims that 700 trees are going to be cut down. We're going to lose green space, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the phrases that I got a kick out of, and by the way, apparently this phrase was passed on by a number of others, is that he says, quote, that the original decision to locate the new Civic was in Tunney's pasture. Well, I mean, that was the original decision. Come on, folks. The original decision reached by a panel of 12 experts in health and medicine and science and engineering. The original unanimous decision was to locate the new Civic Hospital directly across from where it is now on that vacant weed-filled field. That was the original decision. So there was Clive Doucette and all these protesters down there, God bless them, saying the original decision was Tunney's Pasture. Tunney's Pasture was never a decision. What happened? Oh, well, you know what? Pierre Poilievre, has a total chapter on this in my latest book. He points out this was a pure, raw, dirty political decision, primarily prompted by our old friend Catherine McKenna. As you know, the original decision was across the road. This was a panel of experts. They examined all the possible sites for a new Civic. They decided unanimously, across the road. It's a vacant field. Folks, if you don't believe it's vacant, drive by any time. In the spring, you're going to see it filled with dandelions. It's a beautiful yellow field, empty field, for God's sake, just across the road. But anyway, they decided, so they somehow or other, McKenna got the NCC involved. They're real health experts, right? And they said, Tunney's Pasture. Well, we laughed. There's Tunney's Pasture. They'd have to tear buildings down. But what concerns me, already because of this decision by the Liberals, the pure political decision, there has been a delay of about 4 years in the construction. The costs are probably, by the end of this, probably almost doubled.
Oh, yeah.
Death, we're going to have people that, people are going to die. Our present Civic Hospital is over 100 years old, for God's sake. And this is just further going to delay it, because I understand that at least one of our city councilors, Leeper, he's going to vote against it. So this is going to continue to become a political issue. John Baird, God bless him, he rented to the Civic Hospital all of the acreage they needed right across the road for $1 a year. It was all settled. The plans were all going ahead. You know what? If they had continued with that, the new Civic would be about half built right now. Yeah. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that, and not only that, but now, Catherine McKenna is getting all sorts of praise as she decides not to run again. This is beautiful. What have we got to thank this woman for? This is a decision that she made, interfered in this.
I think she regrets it. I think she'd like a do-over on that.
Or other, just like the Prime Minister, she walks away with a shining light over her head.
All right. What do you think about Jody Wilson-Raybould calling it quits?
Well, you know what? You got to hand it to this woman, eh?
Yeah.
Now, here is a woman of real principle. She says, listen, the atmosphere in the House has become toxic. I've decided that there's really nothing I can do there that's of benefit to the people. My abilities can be utilized best elsewhere. Good for her. And good for Jane Philpott, once again, has come to her defense. I think that this is one of the few people, it seems to me, of principle that at least used to be in that Liberal caucus. And by the way, talking about Jody Wilson-Raybould, when you examine the history here, it would appear to me that our esteemed Prime Minister has a little bit of trouble with women. We've got Jody Wilson-Raybould, Jane Philpott, Leona Alsalev, I think that's how she crossed the floor, remember, and joined.
That's right.
We've got Selena Cesar Chavanez, who wrote a book during which she called the Prime Minister a number of very nasty names. We've got Catherine McKenna not returning. We've got Julie Payette, et cetera, et cetera. He seems to have a few little problems with women here. Okay. But nonetheless, you know what?
He doesn't have a problem with women voters, though.
No, absolutely. And I've covered this many times before with great astonishment.
Darren O'Toole has the problem with the women voters. Though.
Well, yeah, that's as a matter of fact, and even in the last election, when it wasn't O'Toole, women outnumber men about 2 to 1. In other words, for every man that will vote for Trudeau, about 2 women will vote for him. This just beats the bejabbers out of me. But you know what? I have a feeling that maybe, because O'Toole is a pretty decent man, and I think he comes across as a decent man, a very well-grounded man. And I'm thinking that if he gets his face out into as he's going to do, he's going to go on tour. If he could come up with some innovative ideas, I mean, it's not good enough to simply be critical of Trudeau. Nobody seems to care about all the scandals anymore. What we need to hear from O'Toole is some new ideas, some fresh ideas, particularly with young people. I've already talked with them and said, listen, at the very least, get yourself out into universities. Get yourself, Trudeau won the young vote by promising marijuana, etc. Get yourself out to a greater appeal to young people. Whether they're paying any attention, I don't know. I hope so.
Okay. Talk soon. Thank you,
sir. Good
Bye-bye.
morning.
Yep,
Good
that's
morning.
the legendary Lowell Green. Bourque is back after the news on City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Friday, the 9th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, mostly cloudy, 16 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. A COVID-19 milestone for Ottawa's hospitals. No active cases of COVID-19 in any of the capital's healthcare centres. First time this has happened in about a year. Ontario's Roseanne Archibald is the new national chief of the Assembly of First Nations. She'll be the first woman to serve in the position. She's scheduled to hold her first news conference since yesterday's vote at 10 o'clock this morning. A bunch of police activity around Rideau Hall this morning, all part of a training exercise. The RCMP says it's conducting the exercise on the grounds of Rideau Hall and that the Mounties train regularly on various situations and scenarios to ensure that they're prepared. Some Orleans residents and community groups are outraged as Ottawa's planning committee approves the construction of a sports dome near Garneau High School. Homeowners say the dome will be too big and too close to their homes. City News Time 9:32. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Bourque is back from Bourque Newswatch. Pierre Bourque, good morning.
Good morning, Rob. A little chilly Bo Billy out here in the West End, but I want to congratulate Lowell for giving blood this week. And it just underlines the constant need that the Canadian Blood Services has right across the country to get people to come in and donate blood, because without that one donation, the rest of the blood services just doesn't work. And, we're reading about how, life is coming back to some semblance of normal. That means that while hospitals are emptying of COVID cases, that means that they can resume surgeries. And for every surgery, you need 3.2 units of blood on average.
Well, very, 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 very good point. I heard, I caught a bit of Sam LaPrad's show yesterday here on City News, and she was interviewing someone from Blood Services. And something I didn't know is that they have what's called a stem cell registry, and people can donate stem cells, and usually that would be done in person, and they haven't been able to do that because of the health protocols. But that you can contact them and they send you some kind of home kit and you send it in and you're automatically put into their registry as well, which
which
I thought was interesting.
Fantastic work. It's one of the fabrics of society. You know, that you've got your ordinary human, whether it's you, me, Lowell, whoever, will go in and donate blood, and that blood will go. That really is a gift of life for somebody, and it's not just the whole blood. It's the platelets, it's the plasma. It's, as you point out, stem cells are involved in that. It's just phenomenal activity.
Okay. Hey, are you familiar with the newspaper, the Lowdown to Hull and Back?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I quite like that newspaper.
Not in recent times, but yes, indeed, because I used to live up in Wakefield, and that was a regular read.
The only paper serving the Gatineau Hills since 1973. It's such a great name for a newspaper. The Lowdown to Hull and Back, right? Low down to Hull and back, right? And everything in between. So their top story is about Will Amos. And there's a follow-up report in the National Post this morning, but the original story comes from the Lowdown because Will Amos, being the Pontiac MP, decided to do kind of a media event with the local media, Now, people will remember Will Amos, Liberal MP, Pontiac riding, West Quebec, like everything from Shawville up to Maniwaki, huge riding. He was naked. Okay, the things the things of the pandemic. Doing Zoom work. One time he went running, didn't realize that the Zoom camera was on, and he was getting changed, and an MP took a picture we weren't supposed to see. You know the whole story. And the next time he was urinating. So since then, he has been meeting with a health team, trying to figure out the root cause of these incidents, according to the Lowdown, and coming up with a comprehensive wellness plan to, quote, address the root cause of these incidents. Okay? And the root cause, according to his psychologist, occupational therapist, psychotherapist, and family doctor, is hyperactive multitasking. Hyperactive multitasking. Quote, they conclude that my hyperactive multitasking represents a significant personal and professional vulnerability. Both Zoom incidents reflect situational awareness challenges resulting from hyperactive multitasking and a lack of focus. What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Have you ever even heard of something like that, hyperactive multitasking? You ever heard of that in your entire life?
Leave it to a psychologist to come up with a multi-syllable answer to something that could be, boil it down to 4 syllables, and that is the word stupidity. I think that's what that guy's all about. And, to do it once, bad enough, to do it twice. And then, I think trying to find an explanation for it, you just got to own up. You were stupid.
Hyperactive multitasking. Well,
he was multitasking, Rob. He was trying to do a Zoom, and he was naked at the same time. He was trying. Nature called. That was one task, and
right.
He had his camera on. That was another task.
Yeah.
So he was multitasking, and clearly he was hyperactive. He should have only been doing one of them.
Right.
But it boils down to being just plain stupid. I mean, if that's the level of intelligence that you've got, what are you doing representing the people of the Pontiac in Canada's Parliament?
Amos says his wellness plan includes an emphasis on focusing on a single task at once. Okay. So, all right. When I go to use the facilities, I will not attend the House of Commons virtual session. Okay. He will reduce his overall work intensity from 85 to 60 hours a week. Well, busy guy, I guess. And taking more caution to prevent unacceptable carelessness and distraction, especially in virtual environments. You know what? Here's what I'm going to say about Will Amos, because he says he wants to run again, even if he's not the Liberal nominee, which I doubt he will be, but we'll see what happens. I wish him well. I would say Will Amos, if you could say anything about Will Amos of the Pontiac, he has been by far the most open and transparent of all the Liberal MPs. I mean, he has nothing to hide.
Nothing to hide. Pure, he's naked. He's naked to the world.
He lets it all hang out.
He lets it all hang out.
Okay. Let's move along. You were in Afghanistan, right?
Yes, 2010.
In 2010. Okay. On like a public relations kind of thing, or
Yeah, absolutely. Got invited by the chief of the defense staff, and I represented my sport, which was NASCAR at the time.
Okay.
And I went along with a bull rider from Alberta who represented that sport, and a number of NHL retired players. And there were more Stanley Cup rings among those people than you could well imagine. And Tom Anselmi, who was the head at the time of Maple Leaf Sport and Entertainment, was there. Brian Bourque was on that flight, and that trip was 10 days. It was just an incredible eye-opener. And here we are, we're still talking about Afghanistan with the Americans pulling out, and what to do with the translators who have been left behind.
Yeah. Well, don't you think the country kind of owes it to, if those translators want to relocate to Canada, should we do everything that we can to help them get here?
Well, I think it was a NATO exercise, too, wasn't it? I mean, we had a number of countries there. I recall meeting our own men and women in uniform, and that was a great privilege and an honor to see them there in the field, but also their American and Dutch and German and British counterparts, perhaps a few other countries. And so it was a coalition that was there. And you would think that together they would have devised a solution for that, and maybe that was meant to be, and it just hasn't been followed through or what have you. I believe I read somewhere that several hundred translators and their families have come to Canada already, but there are another 100, perhaps 175 that are there, or 115, I guess, and that they are at risk. And who can blame them? Man, if you were working for the other side and the Taliban are about to take over the place, you're in a problem area there.
Okay, what do you think about reopening, delaying the next step of the reopening in Ontario, Pierre? Top doctor, one of the top doctors, the science advisor, says we're not ready in Ontario because of the Delta variant. We should probably delay going on to step 3. What do you think about that? I'm seeing that the numbers are going up in the UK. The numbers are going up in Asia. We're only as strong as our weakest link. We have to be aware of the fact that a lot of people are not yet vaccinated here in Ontario, in Ottawa, and the rest of Canada. It's of concern, particularly the variants, Rob, because it would seem to me these variants, how many more iterations of these variants are we going to see, and how valuable will these shots that we've all taken to date be with the variants? Because the variants work against your vaccinations. Like the vaccinations will, I think, suppress many of whatever the COVID. I don't know what they call that, but is it antibodies or whatever? But the ones that continue to mutate is because they're able to live on beyond the vaccinations, and they're the ones that are very troubling to me. I don't know what to do. Okay. Do you watch soccer? Are you into it, or are you following it? Or
not a big soccer fan.
Not a big soccer fan.
Wembley is going to be, mission central for any soccer fan.
Yeah, 60,000 were there. I think it was Wednesday. Was it Wednesday? Wednesday was the game. I think Wednesday. Yeah. When England moved on to the finals, and then it's Wembley again on Sunday. England and Italy. Could you ask for a better Euro 2020, even though it's 2021 final than that? England and Italy. That's pretty wild, right?
Yeah. Very exciting.
Preston Street will be hopping, I guess. They'll be happy, right? On Preston Street.
I was speaking to some people in England yesterday, actually, and they're totally excited that they're living it the way I'm sure the Montrealers this past week were living the Stanley Cup. But I'm also excited about the Canadian at Wimbledon.
That's at 11 o'clock this morning, that game.
Denis Shapovalov, and I wish him good luck, and he'll make Canadian history. He'll make history if he can win Wimbledon. Just a phenomenal opportunity.
Yeah, his opponent is the number 1 player in the world now, though, right? Djokovic?
Yeah, and boy, what a performance he put on in Paris. on the clay courts just 2 weeks ago. That man, just tremendous athlete.
Yeah, and it's packed at Wimbledon too, right? It's just weird that the UK is there. They I think they've just decided we're moving on. We're moving on. Yep.
The economic argument wins out. As long as hospitals remain able to address whatever COVID patient requirements are there on any given day, I think maybe that's prevailing.
I guess this is what I want to get at. What you remember always on your site you have the curve on your website, right?
Yes.
Daily new cases COVID-19 in Canada, and you've been doing this since it all began. And, flatten the curve. We need surge capacity in the hospitals. We have to make sure the hospitals are not overwhelmed. Well, in Ottawa, there's nobody in the hospital. Nobody.
Yep. But look, let me point out that curve, which our listeners can go and check out at Bourque.com, is that the curve right now is actually it fell off a cliff. If you go back to the month of May at its height, April-May at its height, and suddenly the numbers just fell off a cliff, just directly downwards.
Yeah.
But in the last 2 weeks, it's now flattening, and it's not flattening at the bottom. It's flattening at what it was at last July and August. So what does that mean? If it's now flattening at the numbers we saw in July and August of last year, and here we are in July of this year, are we going to continue to go down but at a slower rate, or are we headed back to that third wave that everybody's worried about, or the fourth wave?
Fourth wave, I guess it would be at this point. Okay. All right. Have a great weekend, Pierre. It's always so great to have you on our show.
Excellent. You have a good
talk
weekend.
soon.
Thank
you too. Bye-bye. From Bourque Newswatch, that's Pierre Bourque. Anthony DeMonte on the latest for the city's vaccination program. Coming up next here on City News.
The opening a business especially in a pandemic, in that kind of situation, is very challenging. First, people don't know me, people don't know my product. To build a new clientele, to build a trust for them, to show them that I care about it. I do love my food. That was the biggest challenge. And of course, in all lockdown, I had to face it regards my employee, girls, ladies, what they work for me. I didn't want to tell them, sorry, I'm closed, I'm not having a job for you. No, they have families, they have kids to feed. So this is very important because we are family orientated. And we decided to open. We, of course, essential business. So been very tough, very, very tough, as we didn't see people on the road. Market was completely quiet, but we knew that we have to wait, and we knew that we're gonna be fine. In this town, we built online shop, Vedel Online, and we did Uber Eats, which one is picking up and is very, very popular. We have a really good feedback. So this is the song from my heart. And and we try to expand. I'm thinking about opening another location. So I want to make Vedel famous. I want to make the Vedel place to be for all the families with kids. Try the traditional food, what their grandparents cooked in the countries when they're from, or even Canadian people. They're more than welcome to come and try our famous pierogis. I try to be passionate about my food, organic food made with love, with all homemade, organic. So you can find food from all over the Europe: Polish, German, Ukrainian, Romanian, French, Armenian. So all kind of different types of food. Homemade lunches. We focus on the homemade lunches, grandma style. I keep always saying, like in my Genia Babcia house, how she cooked. I wanted this love and this food over here because I believe that will bring all people around me. And all the organic cold cuts, lovely selection of sausages, cheeses, European cheeses, great selections of mustards, French cookies. All what you need from Europe you can find here at the Vedel Touch of Europe. If you think good way, that's it. You have to. I had the option to cry in the corner and say, oh, pandemic is coming. No, you need to stand up and fight for it and have your eyes open, think outside of the box, and and do it.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
More than 50% of all Ottawa residents over the age of 18 have now been fully vaccinated against COVID-19. And with that, it's a great pleasure to welcome back to our program Anthony Monte from the City of Ottawa Emergency and Protective Services head, running the vaccination program. Good morning. Welcome back.
Good morning, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations, and thank you again on behalf of everyone who may be listening right now for a job well done, everybody, in doing this.
Well, that's really kind. It is a team effort, but the congratulations goes to the community, too, for stepping up here in Ottawa and getting vaccinated.
Okay. Over these last, say, 5-6 months, what have been the big challenges with the vaccination program here locally?
Yeah, the biggest challenge, bar none, has been the availability of vaccine. And I remember when we've chatted earlier on, you remember, we were getting not that much vaccine. We had to triage. We started with long-term care, and then our old age residences, and then congregate care centers. And, it was really just trickling out until the last, few weeks, or I'd say the last month, when now we're seeing good supply arrive. We had the infrastructure in place. We had the logistics. We had the planning in place. We knew what we had to do. We just didn't have the vaccine. And now that we have the vaccine, we're seeing the results as a result of having good supply.
And how that was going to be my next question. How do you describe the supply now? Adequate? More than adequate? How would you describe it?
I would say it's adequate and it's sufficient to meet demand. So we have the capacity, and as you know, we initially only had 4 sites. All 7 of our sites are open up now, running at full capacity. There's availability now on the website. There's still more appointments available, so we're now meeting demand, right? So that's great, and I'd encourage, because there are some people still that haven't gotten their first dose, so I think that's probably an important message. Get your first dose. I don't know what's going on there. That's something that's important, but so the capacity is there now, and we're meeting the demand. So I think we're in a really, really good place.
Okay. Well, what do you think might be going on? With are we at the point now where we've hit some kind of critical mass where we're kind of hitting that threshold, peaking maybe?
Yeah, that's what our public health analysts are looking at right now. Have we hit a threshold? We're at 81% first doses, and as you mentioned, we've hit our 50% threshold for second. And I suspect probably next week we could chat, and we'll probably be at 60%. The way the analysis of things are going, we still have 235,000 appointments booked from now to July 20th. So that'll also impact it in there. The vast majority are second doses, but there are first doses. When we look at the data, there's an age group 18 to 39. When you compare across all the age cohorts, they're the group that seems to be the ones that have the lowest first dose capacity. And, we're looking at that. Is that because that's an age group that's, very mobile, they're working, they don't have time. So we're looking at what we can do to help that. But, myself, Dr. Etches, whenever we have the opportunity to speak with people like you and get the message out, we're now pivoting our message. Those who haven't had a first dose, please get registered. There's plenty of availability. Get a first dose so we can move on. We can't get to the next stage of this pandemic and return to some semblance of normalcy till everybody gets their second dose, and we're in the 90% range. So we need people to get out there and not hesitate to get their doses.
Okay. Given the supply and the facilities that are open now and the appointments that are available and the current pace that you're on, right now we have about, I have here 80% of residents have had at least one. This is 12 and over, 45% fully vaccinated. And then when you look at 18 years of age and older, it goes up 81%. Yep. And then we believe over 50%, according to officials. At the pace that we're on right now, how long do you think it would take for 90% of eligible residents to be fully vaccinated?
If we take the discussion we just had about those that seem to be hesitating, we seem to be plateauing on first doses. That's my biggest worry that could impact what I'm about to answer you on. We have the capacity, we have the vaccine. If we continued, if people just continued booking and going, by mid-August, we'd be in a position and pretty close to those kind of numbers. The only worry I have now is that group of 18 to 39 that seems to be not hesitant, but they're not in the high 80s percentage of getting their first vaccine yet. And as you know, when you get your first vaccine, you have to wait 28 days before you can get a second vaccine. So that also plays in how long it would take. That's the only caveat I had. Otherwise, we have the capacity, we have the vaccine. If we kept going at this pace, mid-August, for sure we'd be fine. And you raise a good point, Rob. The 12 to 17, there's challenges across Ontario, but we're not seeing that here in Ottawa. 78% of that cohort has gotten their first dose, and they got them later because they could only get Pfizer. So we'll be in a good position when they all get their second doses for the openings of schools, and that's the other target that we're kind of looking at, right, for fall. So, I think end of August, rather not October, August, we could be in really good shape.
Yeah, that's good news. That's very good news. I mean, the middle of August is only 5 weeks from now. So
that's right.
Yeah. Now, what are you hearing from your frontline workers about people refusing a shot of Moderna?
There is still some of that going on, and I know we chatted about this a little while back when I was on with you. It's not significant, Rob. It's a dozen a day we're hearing across the board. I think people are starting to understand that they're interchangeable. And that the other side of the equation, though, to be fair, is we plan in each of our sites to have both Moderna and Pfizer in every one of the sites, and we always attempt to give you the vaccine, your first vaccine that you had. If we can't, because of circumstance in that day or something going on, and we had to have, put some aside for 12-year-olds, and we don't have enough Pfizer, then you're offered, you have to make that informed consent, and that's when we've had a couple of occasions, like I said, a dozen a day, maybe or so, that they'll say, no, I don't want, and they'll walk away. But it's very little, and I would say it's diminishing. It's going the other way. I think because of information now out there, people are realizing it's interchangeable, and they truly are. And we shouldn't hesitate. We've got to get our community to 90% so we can start looking at opening up and getting back to normal.
And ditching those masks that everybody wants to get rid of. So, okay, I want to ask you because...
Sure.
I maybe somebody told me this. I may have just forgot. There's so much information these days. But when it comes to the actual cost to the city of the vaccination program, thinking about the vaccine itself, the supplies, the Band-Aids, all of this stuff, you have to have space, which means utilities have to be running, all of this stuff. You have wages for people. Is the city paying for any of this? Is it being reimbursed by upper levels of government? Is it all being covered by upper levels of government? Can you give us a sense of that, please?
Sure. So since the beginning of this, we've opened, and I don't want to get bureaucratic with people, but we have cost centers that have been identified for everything you've just described is all being tracked. And yes, the provincial government is saying that they will be reimbursing us for those costs, and they will be giving all the public health units that reimbursement. And we've got because public health has a separate governance when it comes to the city, they've got their own board. Mm-hmm. We've actually got a written memorandum of understanding between the city and the public health board. So everything we're doing to support them in this operation, as you've just mentioned, the buildings, everything, the staff, the extra staff that we've had to hire, all that is being tabulated and accounted for, and those costs will be put forward to the provincial government, and we've been told by the provincial government that they will be covering those costs.
Thank you again, and thank you to all your staff, sir, for a job that continues to be very well done. I haven't heard a single complaint.
Thanks, Rob. Always great to be with you. Yep. Take care.
Yep.
Have a good day.
In charge of emergency and protective services for the city of Ottawa, and the big task is the vaccination program. That's Anthony DeMonte. This is the Rob Snow Show, the Talk Back Hour, Friday free for all. You pick the topics, we don't pick the topics. 750-1310 It's right after the news. Grab a line. Love to hear from you this morning. This is City News.
Is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News. Now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Friday, the 9th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, mostly cloudy, 16 degrees, 16 in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Ottawa's hospitals are celebrating a milestone. 0 active cases of COVID-19 within their walls. City News reporter Chris Curries explains.
It's nothing like on May 3rd when the Ottawa hospital campuses were treating 82 patients for COVID-19, a record. But now they're at 0. The first time that's happened since July of 2020. Same situation at Monte Hospital, although they've been at 0 a few times in the past couple of weeks. Same for Queensway Carleton, who say it's a good sign and a moment to celebrate. Last week, the number of COVID-19 patients in Ottawa ICUs dropped to 0 for the first time this year. The hospitals all agree, though, that this isn't time for anyone to let their guards down and are encouraging everyone to continue to get vaccinated, first and second doses. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time 10:02. Pfizer says it is about to seek approval from the U.S. Food and Drug Administration for a booster shot of its COVID-19 vaccine. ABC's Trevor Ault says American health officials oppose the idea.
The pharmaceutical company announcing Thursday it's planning to ask the FDA for authorization to offer a third dose 6 to 12 months after the second to take on the Delta variant. But within hours, the CDC and FDA releasing a joint statement undercutting that announcement, saying Americans who have been fully vaccinated do not need a booster shot at this time.
Pfizer says early data from its booster study suggests antibody levels jump 5 to 10-fold after a third dose, compared with a second dose months earlier. It's not a done deal yet, but Britain is looking at plans to allow people from overseas who've been double vaccinated into the country without any quarantine. ABC's Tom Rivers reports.
The British government is actively working on trying to allow those who are fully vaccinated into the country, but standardization is proving to be a real headache. Transportation Secretary Grant Shapps.
Easier done from some places like the EU, where they have a digital app coming along, than it is in the United States, where they have, I think, 50 different systems, one for each state, largely paper-based.
Shapps hopes to make an announcement in the next few weeks applicable to people who've received WHO-approved vaccines in other countries. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
City News Time 10:04. The unemployment rate in this country fell from 8.2% in May to 7.8% last month as the economy added nearly 231,000 jobs. The gains came as pandemic restrictions were lifted or relaxed across the country. Statistics Canada reports an increase of almost 264,000 part-time jobs, but a drop of full-time jobs by more than 33,000. Canada's Chrystia Freeland and other G20 finance ministers meeting today and tomorrow in Venice will discuss a major overhaul of the way that the world's biggest multinational companies are taxed. Negotiators from 131 countries have agreed on sweeping proposals designed to deter complex international avoidance schemes that have cost governments billions of dollars in revenue. The key feature is a global minimum corporate tax of at least 15%. If a multinational company escapes taxation abroad, it would have to pay the minimum at home. Let's get a check on our local weather forecast now. Here's weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
It's a mix of sun and cloud for today. No active weather threat. Comfortable conditions, a little below seasonal, but daytime highs near 23. Very comfortable, slight humidex of 27. Gorgeous conditions this weekend for patios. Sun and cloud tomorrow near 26 degrees. Sun and cloud for Ottawa and on Sunday, highs near 27 and a slight humidex near 32. Enjoy it. The daytime high today, 23.
16 right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls under a mostly cloudy sky. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
And it's the Friday free-for-all. Our favorite hour of the week around here. We don't come up with the topics. You come up with the topics. We do our best to roll with it. It is always an adventure. And while we usually stick to topics that have been in the news, that is not a hard and fast rule, okay? Maybe it's something that you think should be in the news. Maybe it's just a pet peeve. Maybe you want to blow the whistle on a major scandal. Whatever it is, we're usually down with it. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Step 2, we're in Step 2. We're in Step 2 in Ontario for the grand reopening. Okay? The reopening roadmap. And we're supposed to be in this phase of the reopening process for another 11 days. 20th. And now it sounds like our move into Step 3 could be delayed. Could be delayed. What do you think of that? You know, that's one of the things that's in the news this week. I just don't know how well that's going to go over. If Doug Ford comes out next week and says, folks and friends, I'm in it for the little guy, but, and I'm sorry and my heart breaks and gosh almighty, we have to delay things. Again, I'm sorry to do that to you. Just given how well the vaccination program and given the current situation with the healthcare system, I don't know if that's going to go over very well. That's why, I look at this headline this morning, CP24. Feel free to comment on this or anything else for that matter because it's Friday free-for-all. Headline, Ontario absolutely not ready to move into Step 3. Scientific director says. Absolutely not ready. I'm just quoting from the story. The scientific director of the Ontario Science Advisory Table says the province is absolutely not ready to move into the next step of the reopening plan due to the spread of the more transmissible Delta variant. Dr. Peter Uni described the COVID-19 variant as a completely different beast. He says, quote, we need to wait now. We need to wait now. Be patient, not get ahead of ourselves. It's an absolute no-go to rush this, end quote. It's an absolute no-go to rush this. I don't know. You can accuse the Ford government of being many things. Being in a rush, I wouldn't say that's one of them. But what do you think about that? Staying in the Step 2 phase, period, for longer than originally planned. I mean, for a lot of people, they are of the opinion that, we should have just skipped right over this step 2 business, moved on to step 3 and be done with it. Especially when you look at the vaccination program and the situation at the hospitals. Nobody is in the hospital now with COVID-19. And yet it's still kind of the same old wait and see. And we're not blind. We watch the news. In Calgary, they're going ahead with the Stampede. In BC, the mask mandate over this week's soccer game in the UK. I keep coming back to this. It's weird to see 60,000 people cheering on their team at Wembley. And, here you can't sit with 3 of your friends inside a restaurant. Are we letting the pursuit of perfection get in the way of progress here? 750-1310, 750-1310. I have faith in the health experts. I'm not usually one to second guess the advice, but it's frustrating. I think it's just frustrating. You look around, you see, the news that so many other people elsewhere seem to be living lives that are pretty close to normal. And it keeps coming back. Well, maybe not now, maybe not now, maybe not now, maybe not. Well, when? And then, Delta variant passes. And now they're already talking about Delta Plus. And then they're talking about Lambda. And what comes after that? What comes after that? What comes after that? Anyway, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. There's that. There's a whole lot of other stuff that we can talk about. And we can talk about whatever's on your mind as well. Okay? In Nepean, it's a wonderful place to be in. Pierre, you're up first this morning on the Talkback Hour on City News. I'm good. Thank you, sir.
How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I heard the city want to fix TD Place, Lansdowne Park again.
The North Side stands in the Civic Center, yeah.
Yeah, good.
Good? Okay.
What did that in the first place?
Good question.
Yeah, that's the city. They never think the city. Why did it before?
They did. You can make the case. They did half the job, right? They did half the job.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
How much cost that for the city?
Well, the mayor says it's not going to cost anything because what they want to do, they want to sell what are known as air rights, housing rights. They're hoping to sell, I guess, put up another high rise, and that'll help offset the cost of it.
Well, yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And about the Redbacks, I hope I have a good team this year.
Well, they've lost a lot of good players, Pierre.
I know, it's sad, eh?
Yeah, and a lot of good Canadian players too, like Bradson.
All gone.
Yeah.
And about the Senators.
Oh, I think the Senators are going to be a lot better.
I hope it's signed number 7, Hudachuk.
Oh, Kachuk. Yeah, for sure, Pierre. Yep, yeah, I think they'll get a deal.
Have a good weekend.
Well, thank you, Pierre. It's nice to hear from you. Ciao, yeah, ciao, yeah. Yeah, even the mayor admits, we should have done the North Side stance. Like, no kidding. We'll see what happens with that. I notice Bob Chiarelli, Bob has been saying he wants to run for mayor and he'll run against Jim, even if Jim's in the race. Bob Chiarelli was taking shot after shot at Jim Watson yesterday on Lansdowne. Remember when Jim Watson was the mayor of the pre-amalgamated city, Jim Watson wanted to bulldoze Lansdowne Park, put up a housing development. That's what Bob Chiarelli put on his Twitter yesterday. Mark, Ottawa South. Good morning, Mark. You're on City News.
Thank you, Rob. My comment was prompted by listening to you talk to Lowell about the Ottawa Hospital.
Mm-hmm. Civic Hospital, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
In this world, if it was only bad people who did bad things, then life would have a certain predictability to it. But Catherine McKenna is not a bad person. In fact, she's a good person who wanted to do good. But she did one of the worst things to the people of Ottawa that any politician ever did when she killed the original design. Because any time you need to get patients or staff from one building to the other on an emergency basis, which will happen frequently, there is simply no quicker, easier way than through a catwalk over Carling Avenue, which would have existed under the original design. And you can do it any time of the day or night, regardless of the external weather, the traffic on Carling Avenue, even when it's minus 20 in January, the roads are icy. Instead, to pack people in ambulances and to send them up Carling Avenue, it just can't work as well. And which is why the decision to they should have done like the Mulford Hospital, just a complete capitulation, take the egg on their face and move on, and not a face-saving semi-compromise like the Sir John Carling building. Dr. Kitts, he went along with it because I guess he was desperate to get something going, even if it was the wrong thing.
Yeah.
I think I would have resigned if I was in his position. But it ultimately is her permanent legacy. And that's the tragedy of it. You see, it would actually be a better city to live in had she never entered public life. And that's a sad thing to say about this.
Well, I mean, that's, well, certainly when you read some of the coverage of her departure from the federal scene, that's not the prevailing opinion.
But it's what we're going to wind up living with. And a hospital exists for centuries sometimes.
Yeah. I have said, because I've asked her about it in interviews, I really do think she regrets it. I really do. Maybe it was a kind of a rookie mistake and she let her ideology get in the way of pragmatism. That's my sense of it.
Well,
I think if she had a do-over, she wouldn't have gone down that road.
You see, the problem with these social justice warriors is they charge before they think.
Yeah, okay.
You don't play these games with a hospital.
Right. Yeah. Oh, man, I know. I remember interviewing Jim Turrell about it. Yeah, I think he was on the board of the hospital at the time. He was beside himself with it.
If she would publicly apologize for it, I would forgive her.
Yeah.
And admit it was wrong, and it would take enormous courage. But I would forgive her and I would respect her, but I don't think she's going to do that.
Yeah, David has just used some mapping software here, and he says from the original Civic to where this new campus is supposed to be would be a 5-minute drive or a 20-minute walk.
Assuming you've got decent road traffic and weather conditions.
Sure, yeah. Okay, gotta go, Mark. Thank you. Bye-bye. Yep, Friday free-for-all, and that's how we roll here on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making, I knew this is a skill I had, so I made chocolate that had a cultural based with a teaching, because culture here is not just a little part, it's the large part, it's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair. And then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs. And Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started just with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing, it's just kind of taken off. And it's great, because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff, and it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano, and it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner being around town, and we decided to partner, because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way, and there's and they're very one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together. And it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Pierre, the head of Wabano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
It's time to talk back
on the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Friday free-for-all. Logan in Smiths Falls. You're on City News. Logan, good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Fantastic.
Good, good. So I have a question for you.
Question for me. Okay. All right.
Yes, sir. So yesterday I was on my way home from work, and I saw a decal on the back of someone's car that said, "My bull mastiff is smarter than your honor student." This made me laugh, but not because I thought the decal was funny, but because it could have been anything else at all to show pride in owning a bull mastiff. It could have been, "I have a great bull mastiff, I love my dog," whatever. But instead, it was to poke fun at somebody's honor student,
right.
Which made me think about the divide that we have both in this country and pretty much all across the world. The wealth disparity between, I think the wealth gap is larger now than it was when heads were literally rolling during the French Revolution, which made me think about and pontificate for a little bit on this question, which I'm going to posit to you.
All right.
Are we getting meaner?
I think no doubt we're getting meaner, especially in our virtual online lives.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if we're getting meaner necessarily in person. That really hasn't been my personal experience. I don't find people are meaner in person. I haven't been subject to anything like that. But man, online, it's anything goes, Wild West, and people are just, because you're afforded anonymity, so people are just vicious. I mean, vicious.
Yeah, I agree.
Vicious,
I agree.
Vicious. Yeah. I would say online. Yeah. I would say online for sure. And I do think there's more. What do you want to call it, Logan? Tribalism. Like it's us and them, and we're always right and they're always wrong, and there's just no room for compromise for some people.
Absolutely. There was a lady that had called in I think it was your first talk back after Canada Day, and had mentioned something about how, people that are upset with the way Canada is don't seem to remember the people that fought for it. And you bring a great point that I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. Like, I'm half black, so I can be super happy that if it wasn't for people fighting in World War II, I wouldn't exist. But I can also be, as a millennial and as somebody that is kind of growing up in Canada now, be a little bit unhappy with just kind of the state of the country and the way that it treats persons of color and Indigenous people.
Yeah. Like, my whole approach to Canada Day this year was certainly different. I said it's less celebratory, more reflective this year. I think, I think you can certainly mark and be proud of all the great accomplishments of this great country. Look, hundreds of thousands of people from all over the world come here because they desperately want to call a country like Canada home. A standard of living that is almost second to none. All the great things that come with liberal democratic society, due process, rule of law, human rights, all of these things. That they're craving for in other parts of the world. But at the same time, no country's perfect. Canada's a work in progress. And the news of the last several weeks has been very jarring to a lot of people. And it needs to be learned, understood, and appreciated. Remember, it's truth and reconciliation. It's truth and reconciliation. And hey, the truth, it's going to be hard to hear. It has been hard to hear. But you can't reconcile what happened until you recognize the truth, I think.
Absolutely. Well, Rob, I just wanted to let you know that you have a new regular listener.
Well,
so thank you very much.
Thank you. Great call. Yeah. Isn't that a great question? Are people meaner? Gosh, Logan, I might steal that. I might make that a question for my own show. Oh, yeah, I think people are meaner. Online, for sure, people are just mean and nasty. Leo, good morning. Morning, Leo. Yeah. Hi, Leo.
Good morning.
Great to hear from you.
I want to talk about the reopening.
The reopening, yeah. We're in step 2. We're supposed to go into step 3 on the 20th, but the top science advisor says we're not ready.
Well, you know what I think they're doing?
What are they doing?
I think they're studying the other provinces like Alberta and BC.
Mm-hmm.
And by studying them, they'll have a good idea of what's going to happen in comparison, with them, what's going on now, and with the weeks to come. Is there going to be a big surge? Is it going to level off? Is it going to be like that? And maybe that's what they're studying right now. I don't know, or also they're maybe studying other parts of the world that are, in a situation of trying to reopen and, we don't know,
Sure.
It's just like, that heat wave in BC. I mean, look at this variant could really spread really fast. It's not like the original strain, BC, next thing you know, they had a few fires and it just exploded to 200 fires, and
Right.
right now they got 68 fires that are out of control,
Leo, what I'm getting from you is you think it's okay to take a wait-and-see approach, right?
Is it okay?
You think it's okay, right, to take a wait-and-see approach?
Well, I mean, I know the economy, wants to reopen, but
Sure.
we want to make sure that we don't make another mistake like we've done before.
Oh, yeah.
Because, we've learned enough about this.
Yeah.
It's been around now for long enough.
Yeah.
So I think we're just being cautious enough so that this doesn't happen again.
Okay.
So if we do the right thing,
Yes.
we're going to thank ourselves in the long run that we did the right thing by waiting a little bit.
Okay. Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Leo. Thank you. I want to take one more. We got a couple of minutes left here before the halftime of the talkback hour. Blackburn Hamlet. Chris, good morning. You're on City News.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Chris.
I'll respectfully disagree with your previous caller. I think it's time for Ontario to open.
Okay.
If you keep worrying about every new variant that comes along, then you will never open. We seem to be doing okay with the vaccinations, and there's no hospitalization. So, as Lowell said to you earlier, I think it's time to take the foot off the brake a little bit and let businesses do their things. You're just going to totally ruin the economy if you keep going this way.
Okay.
And Quebec is open, so
Quebec is pretty much open, yeah.
We're talking about all those people in the 10,000 people in the square there outside watching the hockey game.
Yeah.
Any of those people could come into Ontario now and spread the variant. So how can you have one province, two provinces side by side, one worrying about a variant and the other one not, when people can go back and forth freely?
Good
Makes no
points.
sense.
Good points. Good points.
Yeah. Also, last night I was watching the CBC National. They were taking viewer questions, and I've always accused the CBC of screening their callers or viewers, whatever, when they participate.
Okay.
Last night they were asking the at-issue panel questions, video questions. Nobody did ask any questions about things like equalization payments. They never mentioned the PM scandals. There was one question about the pandemic procurement, and all the panel was basically saying, well, we did a great job with the procurement of the vaccines. One lady, speaking of your other previous caller talking about why are people so mean, one lady actually asked a video question saying, why is the opposition so mean to the Prime Minister?
Oh, poor fellow.
So
yeah, he's a
it was
poor
a bunch
fellow.
of softball questions.
He is hard done by. The Prime Minister is so hard done by.
Yeah. It's like, well, it was a real softball video question session.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Halftime. Boy, it's flying by this morning. Halftime for the Talkback Hour Friday free-for-all, wide open. We don't come up with the topics. You come up with the topics. 750-1310 is our call-in line. Have a line for you. Rob Snow Show, City News.
and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Friday, the 9th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, mostly cloudy, 17 degrees. Here's what's making news this hour. 0 COVID-19 patients in Ottawa hospitals. It's a milestone not seen in about a year, and is a sign of how dramatically infection rates have dropped off. Just 2 months ago, Ottawa's hospitals had a record high 82 COVID-19 patients combined. 9 more COVID-19 deaths in Ontario and 183 new cases today. Of those, Ottawa has 4. None were reported in any of the surrounding counties around Ottawa. Updated numbers from the local health units will trickle out through the afternoon. A bunch of police activity on the grounds of Rideau Hall this morning is nothing to worry about. The RCMP says it is all part of a training exercise. They urge you not to call 911 unless you have an actual emergency that is not a training drill. Some Orleans residents are mad about a sports dome planned near Garneau High School. The residents say the dome will be too big and too close to their homes. It was approved by Ottawa's planning committee yesterday. City News Time 10:31. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
Friday free-for-all talk back hour, our favorite hour of the week around here. We're wide open on topics. Doesn't sound like the mask mandate is going anywhere. Dr. Vera Etches made that perfectly clear this week. Mandatory mask bylaw is to remain in place as it stands right now, August 26th. August 26th. This is what it says about the mask mandate on the city's website. Ottawa City Council first passed a temporary bylaw in July of last year. So the mask mandate has been in place a year now. A year. Gosh, it's hard to believe it's been a year. Requiring residents to wear masks in all enclosed public spaces, indoor public areas of recreational facilities, shopping malls, retail stores, restaurants, cafes. Mask requirement also applies to public transit, including buses, trains, stations, shelters, and platforms. You are required to wear a mask in any indoor setting, including public transit, common areas of apartments and condo buildings, elevators and lobbies, vehicles for hire, such as taxis, limousines, and private transportation company vehicles, restaurants, cafes, cafeterias, banquet halls, retail establishments, shopping malls, places of worship, libraries, museums, art galleries, recreational facilities, bingo halls, cinemas, theaters, concert venues, specialty events, special event venues, convention centers, cultural, leisure, sports facilities, sports clubs, gym, yoga, dance studios, stadiums, hotels, motels, short-term rental premises, hospitals, independent health facilities, construction trailers, temporary sales offices, municipal facilities, city hall, community centers, cultural, arts, leisure centers, recreation, it goes like that. All supposed to be in place until August 26th. She said, and she's the medical officer of health, so obviously the city, because this is a local bylaw, the council will follow her advice. And she said she wanted 90% of the population fully vaccinated. 90% of the population fully vaccinated. And I heard that this morning. I'm like, jeepers creepers. Is that an unattainable goal? See, this is why we have the top people on the Rob Snow Show, because this morning we had Anthony DeMonte on. He's in charge of the vaccination program, and I asked him how long would it take if everything goes according to plan and we can keep up this pace, vaccinating this many people per day. How long would it take to hit that threshold of 90%? This is what he said.
We have the capacity. We have the vaccine. If we continued, if people just continued booking and going, by mid-August, we'd be in a position and pretty close to those kind of numbers. The only worry I have now is that group of 18 to 39 that seems to be not hesitant, but they're not in the high 80s percentage of getting their first vaccine yet. And as you know, when you get your first vaccine, you have to wait 28 days before you can get a second vaccine. So that also plays in how long it would take. So that's the only caveat I had. Otherwise, we have the capacity. We have the vaccine. If we kept going at this pace, mid-August, for sure we'd be fine.
Mid-August. Okay, so about another 5 weeks. Now, I only bring this up because City Council in Calgary voted, it wasn't unanimous, but it did drop its mask mandate this week, although you still have to wear a mask in a city-owned facility in Calgary. Same with Edmonton. BC ended its mask mandate province-wide on July 1st. Masks are recommended, but they're not required. And across the United States, it's mostly maskless now. Mostly maskless, pretty much. And again, I keep coming back to Euro 2020. You watched the soccer game in Wembley, not a mask in sight. But not anytime soon, by the sounds of things here in Ottawa. Just one more thing. Judy in Almont. Good morning, Judy. You're on City News.
Thank you, Rob. I wonder if there is a scaled-down wee scandal, another one bubbling along under the surface.
Okay.
A mere $300 million. Mary Ng, the Minister of Small Business, it runs this Black Entrepreneurship Loan Fund, and it was granted to FACE, the Federation of African Canadian Economics, without putting it out to other organizations to manage the fund, because she said they've been with us all along.
Okay.
Guess where they're headquartered?
I don't know.
Papineau.
Oh, in Mr. Trudeau's own riding.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, there's another organization called Afro Caribbean Business Network, headed by Ryan Knight, and he said that he wanted to bid to run the program, but he never had a chance because Mary Ng said she was going to just give it to FACE, and that was that.
So they are administering this program?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
The FACE is administering the program, Federation of African Canadian Economics, and that's the organization headed in Papineau.
So it's not the government that's running the program.
No, she granted it to them.
Right, it is similar to we in that way, right? Yeah. It's like, why do we have a public service, you're saying?
Right, so a couple of people, I should say, were interviewed who were applying for funds from this loan fund, and they're concerned that if this turns out to be another scandal, that the fund will be canceled and they'll be out the money.
And then everybody's
out the money. That's right. And the one lady that was applying for funds under that loan fund was showing the application form, and it asked about the sexual organization of your business. Sexual orientation, of your business.
Oh.
Which is there's another weird thing thrown into the whole mix. So anyway, this was broken by the CBC.
Oh, yes, David has sent me. David has sent me. I have to admit, it's the first I've heard of it. David has just sent me the link to the CBC story.
I haven't heard any more about it.
Black business owners raise concerns about government loan fund. Community members claim lack of transparency, intrusive questions, and lack of government oversight.
Exactly.
Ah, very good catch there.
So I thought I'd raise that for you.
Well, thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Yes. Very good. Very good. Dudley. Good morning, Dudley. Yes.
How are you? I want to speak to you just to something about Roseanne Archibald had said and many of the Indigenous people regarding genocide.
Okay.
To me, it hurts me terribly to think that I could, in any way, have been complicit, unknowingly or knowingly,
right,
in killing children. I find it pains me greatly.
Yeah.
I honestly believe that everybody who was involved in that genocide in any way, going back all the years,
yes,
should be brought up on charges if there's a reasonable case.
Investigated, yeah. Investigated, yeah. Well, at least investigated. Is there even,
I'm not presuming they're guilty.
No.
I'm just saying they should be investigated for criminal charges.
Yes. Is there even an investigation underway anywhere in the country?
Not that I'm aware of.
And who would you investigate?
Everybody was involved with it. Right down, they did the Holocaust trials.
Right, yeah.
And they went down to the sergeants and the corporals in the the gas chambers.
Yes.
If it's genocide, they should all be investigated.
All investigated. Okay.
And if I'm not
a lot of the religious denominations that were running the churches were doing so on behalf of the federal government. Should federal government officials be investigated as well?
If they knowingly were involved in it, they should be investigated, definitely.
Okay. All right.
Not anybody to get out of it. I would like them to take that burden off of me.
Okay, thank you.
I honestly did not want to have anything to do with it.
Obviously, sir. Who wants to be considered to be complicit in genocide, right?
Definitely not me.
Yeah. Thank you, Dudley.
Okay, thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye. Yeah. Okay, David has passed me a little note here, and it says, breaking, Briar Lilly scoop. Breaking. This is from Lily's Twitter. Ontario is set to announce that we will enter Step 3 earlier than July 21st, most likely July 16th, which is, when is July 16th? Oh, a week from today. A week from today. It's supposed to be a week from next Tuesday, next Wednesday, I guess. Next Wednesday. Yeah, so like another week and a half. Friday, July 16th. Breaking, Ontario set to announce we'll enter Step 3 earlier than July 21st, most likely July 16th. Indoor dining, retail, and personal care will only be restricted by distancing requirements rather than hard caps. Gyms will be able to open and other indoor events from Brian Lilly's Twitter account. So that's, how many times Doug Ford said, well, we listen to the health experts. We follow the advice of the health expert. Dr. Uni is like the head of the science advisory table, if I'm not mistaken. Is he not the head of the... David, yes, is shaking his head.
That's
yes,
right,
he sure is. And he says, don't rush. Can't be in a rush. Absolutely not ready.
Very clear about that yesterday. Yeah.
He's on CP24 saying, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. Don't even open on the 20th.
Adamant.
Can't do it. Too dangerous. Delta. Now Ford is saying we're going to open a week early. Okay. We'll see what happens. That'll be one to follow up. I'll have to ask the MPPs when they join us about that very thing when they come up at 11:30 during the Queen's Park Week in Review. It is what you call fluid. It is a fluid situation. David, in the Byward Market, good morning. You're on City News.
Well, that announcement just makes my call kind of moot now.
Okay.
I was going to say we should be reopening.
All right.
As sooner. I mean, I've always wondered, why is it always like Ontario as a whole, where everything, the yardstick being used is the Toronto Peel area? Whereas, why can't it be sort of more a regional thing? Like Ottawa has been very, very low for the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
And Gatineau was already open. So there's no worry about cross-border travel in that respect. So why can't Ottawa sort of be allowed to go a little bit ahead of go into Step 3 earlier than, say, Toronto? Because, I mean, our numbers have proven that we should be open.
Yeah, good point. Yeah. And it looks like, a week from today, I guess. According to Lilly, anyway, it'll be a week from today. Set to announce. He doesn't say when he's going to announce it, though.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you, David. Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye. Does Ford have an availability scheduled for today or anything, David? Can you look into that if he's doing a newser today? Okay. Darlene in Nepean. Good morning, Darlene.
Good morning, Rob.
Hi, Darlene.
Yes. I'm sickened by the fact that a lot of people, they can't look beyond their front door.
Mm-hmm.
I suggest they log on to BBC World News and just look at pictures if they can't read or they're not able to comprehend. This doesn't stop at our front door. This is a pandemic, and the state of the world and the variants, it's mind-boggling, and it's dangerous. And I know one caller had said something about it's time to open up. Not time. I stick with Dr. Vera Etches and staying within the guidelines and look out and beyond your front door.
All right, Darlene.
And
Thank you.
I mention one other thing,
Sure,
Rob.
sure thing. Yeah.
I take a medication that if I don't take it, I will have a stroke, heart attack, or die. And it was due to surgery. Now, I have great respect for the Ottawa Hospital and all the campuses and the frontline workers. I was unable to get repeats. My pharmacist was unable to get repeats of this medication, and of a certain doctor that warned me the very same thing, don't take it, die. And it was only today, no more tablets left, that I received my medication. I called the new CEO, well, he's not new anymore, CEO of the Ottawa Hospital, Mr. Love, and got one of his people to call back. And I don't get any feedback. I've got a list of symptoms like your arm, and not addressed, just here, take this, an increased dose. I said their promise that you see in the front lobby as you walk in, their promises to patients, is a laugh, but it's more sad than, it's not funny. There, on my part, there has been no care, and I'm just wondering how many other people have experienced that.
Okay, darling.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I thank you for bringing that to our attention, darling. We'll be right back. Oh, by the way, our sister station in Toronto, 680 News, has confirmed Brian Lilly's tweet, with our Richard Southern tweeting, Step 3 will now start July 16th. Sources tell 680 News 5 days earlier than expected. Sources tell 680 News there will be no capacity limits. No capacity limits for indoor dining, just distancing. Gyms, movie theaters, museums, zoos, 50% capacity. And to my question, no news conference scheduled today from the Ford government. Full details on that coming up during our 11 o'clock newscast. It's the Friday Free For All Talkback Hour final quarter coming up. 1, 2, 3, 4 lines available. It's your last chance to have your say on any topic for the week. Take advantage of it. This is City News.
This affected us big time because when, you know how we are seasoned. We have clothes for the spring, clothes for the winter. That time, lots of clothes didn't arrive on time from Europe or from here because some factory shut down. So, and this put us in an odd position. We received not all the merchandise, part of the merchandise. And people, and for us, we have to be careful, you know, especially with the virus going on. Like, did affect the business, of course, like everybody else. We're not immune, and since the government helped, you know, this did a little bit good for us too, but still affected all the sectors, especially clothing. You know, you can see big corporation affected bad because nobody was like thought it's gonna be like this. You know, earthquake might happen, we joke about it before, things might happen, but this was like a third war, but with a virus. So how to survive, that's the question, and we're doing our best to work with the mall, especially rent in a mall is very high. The government, they have certain, let's say, condition, like how many people will be in a mall or in the stores, etc. Yeah, it's a big factor, but of course, if my store has a back doors, or just will be better, it will be much better. At least we can have curbside much easy, because we have to shut down completely, you know. And this left a mark on us, on everybody too. People always ask me, go online. Certain things you can't go online. Let's say T-shirt, certain product people don't know how to fit, but when come to clothing. Like it's different completely. Let's say I have a customer comes, you can give him 44, but certain suit he might take 42, certain suit he might take 46. So, and how could, I mean, suit is not gonna fit the same. And I see people come back and they show me what they got online and not the same fabric. mostly young people, but if you really want to shop, you have to go to the store because everything will be around you. You want to be sure the color look good, the fit will look good, especially when you spend, doesn't matter how much money, whether 300 or 2,000, you know? You have to try, you have to see what's going on. Please don't be shy, contact us. It will be a pleasure for me to take a suit or coat or anything. Like sometimes people have a funeral, they have things, they have a wedding, they don't want to come to the mall. If I get all the information, I will go and meet them at their home or their business offices. I'm gonna start doing that, you know, and this will help the business and help the people. Like they're afraid to come to the mall for time being, or they're too busy at work. They cannot go anywhere at a certain time, so I'm glad to do that.
Time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
The federal politics this week, there's a lot to chew on. I mean, the Trudeau named his pick for Governor General, Mary Simon. Outstanding choice by all accounts. I know there was some criticism in the Francophone media that she doesn't speak French. I thought she handled that brilliantly, personally. She said she attended a federal day school in northern Quebec and she wasn't allowed to speak her own language, let alone learn French. And maybe this starts an entirely new way of thinking about official bilingualism in the first place. I mean, after all, it's long dead in Quebec. Quebec is unilingual French. And it has the current prime minister's blessing now. Go for it. StatsCan says less than 18% of the Canadian population is bilingual, as we know the term, English and French. But StatsCan also says there are 8 million Canadians with a mother tongue that is a language that is neither English nor French. 8 million. I mean, what's 8 million? It's 25% of the population. According to the last census. 3.5 million people in Ontario alone. Mother tongue is not one of the official languages. 1 million Quebecers. First language not English or French. 1.2 million people in BC. StatsCan uses the term immigrant mother tongues. And the top ones are Mandarin, Cantonese, Punjabi, Tagalog, the Filipino language, Spanish, Arabic, Italian, German, and Urdu are the top immigrant mother tongues. And about 250,000 Indigenous Canadians speak their Indigenous language at all. But anyway, the GG and the languages she speaks, that was a big story this week, most certainly. Dave in Orleans. Good morning, Dave. You're on City News.
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good, Dave. Thank you.
Good. You know, I'm getting concerned about the state of Canada.
You are?
I am.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
You know, we can't develop any kind of pipeline or economic project or mine or whatever. And now we're giving $2 billion to Indigenous people to find graves, which the federal government has known about for at least 20 years.
Well, I haven't heard that we're giving $2 billion to do that.
Yeah, there's $2 billion coming out. You got to find graves.
Well, I believe that's the estimate on what that sort of investigation would cost, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's going to be the long-term benefit of that when we got 7.8% of the country unemployed and the national deficit has doubled in the past, 6 years?
Well, I mean, I guess if it was, one of your ancestors who was basically stolen away from their home, maybe you would want to bring them home and have them identified, Dave.
I hear you.
Right.
And I mean, I have some ancestors that are Indigenous in the past.
Yeah.
And but now they weren't stolen away. But I mean, what in God's name are we doing here? I'm really worried about this country.
I understand, Dave. Trying to reconcile. Nobody said it was going to be easy, right? This is the hard work of reconciliation, my friend.
I hear you, but I'll forget reconciliation for a second. Just look at the federal government's approach to Quebec.
Well, don't get me started on that, sir.
We're not going to.
Yeah.
We're doing reconciliation on one hand.
Yeah.
We're fighting the Indigenous people on the other for the Human Rights Commission decision regarding the
absolutely, sir. Yeah.
And we're turning a blind eye to what's going on in Quebec.
Yeah, absolutely. Agree with you there, Dave. Agree with you. I mean, I and thank you for your call. Trudeau goes to Alberta, slams Jason Kenney around, smacks him around. You're a climate-denying racist. You wanted to ban niqabs during citizenship ceremonies when you were in government, and then the host during the radio interview says, well, what about Bill 21 in Quebec? And Mr. Trudeau actually says, I don't like to interfere in provincial affairs. Right? Just crazy. He announces $400 million to the highly profitable Algoma Steel is making $1 million in profit a day. Okay. Does it really need $400 million of my money, your money, our money to green the steel plant? And then the union the very next day says, you're going to cost hundreds of good paying union jobs. Hey, build back better. So I certainly share some of your concerns, believe you me. Taz, Ottawa. Good morning, Taz.
Yes, that last call was a very interesting call, but I called about the opening, and I do think it's good. I'm a little worried about the new Delta variant, but I do think we need to move on, especially with, you've heard me say this before, Rob, is the whole thing with the new variant. I mean, people indoors have to be 12 to 15 feet, even 20 feet, which I think will be impossible. But I think the mask thing is interesting, whether or not that would be I think that's still going to be mandatory indoors, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting. And then, of course, the whole state. So we're getting back to normal. It's just that we're going to have to wear masks. So that's probably going to get used to. That's going to be difficult to get used to. And so I think that's a sad part that's probably still going to be with us. The other thing that's interesting, and nobody's mentioned, is going across the border or people coming to Canada from other countries. Do they have to be vaccinated? We have a relative. My mother doesn't want to go down to the States because there's a relative there that doesn't want to get vaccinated. So it's good for us to go there, but in coming back. But he can't come here because he doesn't want to get vaccinated. So that'll be interesting. I really do think that'll be interesting if there's going to be something on the border that can prevent people who are not vaccinated to come to Canada or get a PCR test. I just don't think he'll do that.
Okay. Thank you, Taz. Always good to hear from you, sir. Thank you again. That's it for the Talkback Hour for this week. We're back on Monday taking your calls at 750-1310. Coming up right after the 11 o'clock news, it's the Conservative MP for the riding of Carleton. We're going to talk about the unemployment report that was out this morning from Statistics Canada. Pierre, my guest on City News.
This is City News.
KIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
This is Friday, the 9th of July. Good morning. I'm Jason White. Right now in Ottawa, a cloudy gray sky, 17 degrees in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls. Here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Breaking news this morning from Queen's Park. City News has learned that Ontario will enter Stage 3 of its COVID-19 reopening July 16th. That's a week from today. Ontario's reopening plan included scientific advice to wait at least 3 weeks before entering the next stage to fully measure the effects of the last stage. But the Ford government will move Ontario into Stage 3 5 days early. Sources tell our Queen's Park reporter there will be no capacity limits on indoor dining, just physical distancing. Gyms, movie theaters, museums, and zoos will also be allowed to open at 50% capacity again as of next Friday. Stay with City News for the latest on this developing story. Meantime, a milestone in Ottawa's fight against COVID-19, where the capital's hospitals report zero COVID-19 patients for the first time in about a year. Our Chris Curries has the details.
The Queensway, Carleton, Monte, and the Ottawa hospitals all reporting no active cases of the virus. Queensway says it's been like that for a few days. Monte going back and forth for the past couple weeks, while the Ottawa hospital COVID-free for the first time since July of last year. And just 2 months ago, they had 82 patients with COVID-19, a record. Now, they anticipate this won't last forever as there is still community transmission and the hospitals are treating COVID-19 long haulers. But it's another indicator that the worst of the pandemic is in the rearview mirror. They're encouraging everyone to continue to get vaccinated and keep up with health guidelines like masking and distancing. Chris Curries, City News.
City News time 11:02. Rescue workers now focused on finding remains instead of survivors in the rubble of that Florida condominium collapse have no plans to pull back during the recovery effort. Miami-Dade County's police director says detectives and crime scene technicians are working to identify the victims and help with determining the cause of the condo tower collapse.
They get critical components of the structure that they feel through their discipline that are important later on for the investigation and the review that'll be going on. And all that evidence that's documented is transported to our evidence collection side, cataloged by our personnel, and as we move along this process, they'll be further analyzed.
Yesterday marked the 2-week anniversary of the disaster. The death toll now 64, including 1 Canadian. This will be a deeply emotional day for residents of Lytton, BC. They'll board a bus today and finally get to see what is left of their village. It's been more than a week since a wildfire swept into the area, giving everyone just minutes to get out. An investigation is underway into the cause of the fire. The BC Wildfire Service says it appears human activity likely set off the fire. As Elsa moves into New England this afternoon, it may bring the threat of tornadoes along with it. ABC News senior meteorologist Rob Marciano is in Rhode Island.
It's been over 12 years since this area has seen a tropical storm. They've shut down the high-speed ferry service to the Block Islands, to Martha's Vineyard and Nantucket. A lot of tourists still in town, obviously from the 4th of July holiday weekend, but this is not a beach day by any means. They've stationed power crews up and down the coast in Hyannis in anticipation of power outages, and with winds already gusting at just over 70 miles an hour.
This morning, Elsa was just east of Atlantic City, New Jersey, on a path that will take it over Atlantic Canada by tonight and into tomorrow. Let's get a look at our weather forecast around here. Here's weather specialist Denise Andriacci.
Sun and cloud this Friday for Smiths Falls. Daytime highs near 23 degrees. Really comfortable weather this afternoon and into the evening. Great patio weather. Will be around 20 degrees for the evening, and overnight we fall to near 13 degrees for Smiths Falls. So a little bit cool when you wake up Saturday, but gorgeous conditions. Sun and cloud through the day, and highs near about 25 degrees for Smiths Falls. Sun and cloud Sunday, and warming up. Highs near 27. Today, your daytime high 23.
17 right now under a gray, cloudy sky. I'm Jason White. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
I was just reading through Globe and Mail's report this morning on the departure of Jody Wilson-Raybould revealed yesterday. I'm not going to run again in the House for the House. some of the copy in Bob Fife and Steve Chase, their report this morning. Wilson Raybould and cabinet colleague Jane Philpott, quote, resigned in 2019 after accusing the Trudeau government of political interference in criminal proceedings against SNC-Lavalin, the Montreal engineering and construction giant. Raybould's rising star, quote, quickly faded when she refused repeated requests to grant a deferred prosecution agreement to SNC-Lavalin, a Quebec company with strong ties to the government. She was demoted to Veteran Affairs Minister. Quote, and I forgot about this part of the story. Quote, during the SNC-Lavalin affair, the Liberals launched a smear campaign against Miss Wilson Raybould, for which Mr. Trudeau later apologized. I forgot about that. Yeah, they planted stories in the media. Oh, she's difficult to work with, and this has been a long time in coming, and those sorts of things. And yeah, Mr. Trudeau apologized. So anyway, that was yesterday's news, I guess, and today's news is the unemployment report released by StatsCan. Job creation, all part-time, full-time job losses, 7.8%. Is the unemployment rate nationwide, as we welcome back to the Rob Snow Show from the riding of Carleton. He's the Conservative MP for the riding of Carleton, Pierre Poilievre. Good morning.
Good to be with you, Rob.
Yeah, it's nice to hear from you again. Your reaction, please, to the jobs numbers out today.
I was staggered that we actually had full-time job losses. Last month, as you know, Rob, businesses were starting to reopen. The restrictions began lifting. So we all expected massive job creation after the previous 2 months of job losses. We assumed that people would be rushing back in to work at their restaurants and coffee shops and other places. But in fact, the opposite happened, 33,000 full-time job losses. This is the opposite of what we should be expecting in the reopening phase, and it points to long-term damage in our economy that doesn't seem to be happening elsewhere. In the U.S., UK, Japan, Germany, unemployment is lower than it is here in Canada. As the rest of the world gets back to work, we're stalled.
Yeah, I want to get into that because I know you've been keeping track of how our peer countries are doing, but this to me is one of the concerning aspects of the unemployment report released this morning by the Labor Force Survey released this morning. This is StatsCan. They're tracking the data. The number of Canadians considered to be long-term unemployed. You're considered to be long-term unemployed if you're out of work more than 6 months. It didn't change at all. It didn't change. It hasn't improved at all. Now, I guess if you're the optimist, you could say it hasn't gotten worse, but it hasn't gotten any better either. And it's 166% higher than when the pandemic first started. And we know the volumes of research has been written on it. The longer you are unemployed, the harder it will be for you to re-enter the labor force. So to see this statistic, the number of people unemployed for more than 27 weeks, that situation is not improved, is very concerning to me. What about you?
It's a big problem because, as you say, skills atrophy, people's employment networks fall apart. They no longer have the contacts to get back into jobs. And it becomes more and more difficult each day that goes by to restart your career. So we have to get people back into work. The other thing that's concerning is that we actually have 560,000 vacant jobs in Canada right now that employers are trying to fill. And then we have over 1 million unemployed Canadians. So what's stopping us from connecting the people without jobs to the jobs without people?
So what do you think is, if we want to connect the jobless with jobs, what's stopping us from making that connection, say from a public policy point of view? What's going on there, do you think?
It's hard to say. I mean, the current government does not seem to be focused on restarting a paycheck economy. They think that we can pay the nation's bills on the government credit card, and perhaps they think that is a permanent, acceptable outcome from COVID is just to keep people on assistance programs, even though people want to work. So we don't know exactly what's causing it, but there are a lot of jobs without people. We need to connect the workers with those jobs. If I could also make another point, Rob, is that this last month, the federal government had was the month that the federal government said all the pre-COVID employment would be restored. So all of the jobs that have been lost since March 2020, that first lockdown, were supposed to be restored by this month, according to Chrystia Freeland's budget. Well, we fell 340,000 jobs short of that promise. That's a broken promise on jobs, and it proves that the government has lost a handle on the labor market.
Okay, so what do you think should happen at this point in time, Mr. Poilievre, to the income relief programs? We had the original CERB, which became the emergency response benefit, the CERB without the E. It's supposed to be wound down by sometime in September. Your New Democrat colleagues would like it, some form of it maintained. What do you think should happen to a program like that?
Well, when COVID is over, the COVID emergency programs need to be over too. Those programs were to pay people whose jobs were shut down by the government. It was understandable that if the government is depriving you of an income by shutting your workplace, then it had to replace that income. Fine. But if the economy reopens and we're all fully vaccinated, back to a normal working economy in September, then those programs have to be left with the COVID past, and we need to get back to paychecks.
Okay. I guess here's what I want to ask you. There are rumors, and I'm sure you've heard them, there might be an election soon.
Right.
And you will be asked, you are one of the, and especially you more than others, you will be asked repeatedly, what would you do different? If you want to be the government in waiting, what would you be doing different? So what would you be doing different in terms of skills promotion, skills advancement, and job creation in the country? What would a conservative government be doing that the Liberals are not doing?
We would green light the over $20 billion of resource projects that await federal sign-off. They are right across the country. There's a $14 billion liquefied natural gas plant waiting approval in the Saguenay region of Quebec. There's about $6 billion of small tactical pipelines in Western Canada. There are projects up for consideration in the Ring of Fire of Northern Ontario. We would fast-track the federal approval for those projects. We would also repeal anti-pipeline laws that are banning us from buying our own energy in Canada and making pipelines with our own steel and creating jobs for our refinery and energy workers. We would fast-track, we would green light large-scale projects. We would incentivize municipalities and provinces to speed up building permits. Right now, we're the 36th of 37 OECD nations for the time it takes to get a building permit. We should be the fastest place to get an answer. If you want to build economic infrastructure and fill it with workers, we'd reform our tax system to reward rather than punish investment, work, and savings. We would push the provinces on interprovincial free trade. Right now, we're losing $80 billion a year on interprovincial trade barriers. So that kills jobs and costs the average household $6,000 in higher prices and lower wages. So those are some of the things we would do to unleash free enterprise and get people working.
Okay. I want to ask you, what is your understanding of what the Canada Infrastructure Bank is supposed to do? In Ottawa, it has provided a loan to the city of Ottawa to buy electric buses, for example. But it has also, because parliamentarians, as I understand it, they would like, or at least a committee, you correct me if I'm wrong, want to know how much the executives are being paid and bonuses are being paid, but the infrastructure bank says none of your business, which doesn't seem right to me. But what is the infrastructure bank now?
Well, it's not infrastructure.
Okay.
You know that
Right.
because it hasn't completed a single infrastructure project in 5 years, despite spending millions of dollars on rent and executive pay. It hasn't done that. And it's not clear what it does that cannot be done by itself. There are trillions of dollars available in capital and credit markets for infrastructure already without government involvement. Pension funds love funding infrastructure because they can get a consistent yield from it over long terms to pay out their pensions. And we're talking trillions of dollars that are available. Why does the city of Ottawa need a loan from a federal crown corporation when lending markets lend to municipalities all the time? So effectively what we've done here is the federal government has taken out a loan and given the money to the infrastructure bank, which has then lent the money to the city of Ottawa. Why wouldn't the city just go and get its own loan? It sounds to me like we're creating a bunch of layers of corporate bureaucracy to favor financial elites and insiders to do what can already be done.
Plus, if a parliamentary committee says we would like to know how much the people working there are being paid, you would think, we're paying them. So
look, they should get it. But Rob, I'll tell you, as outrageous as that is, what worries me even more about this bank is not the millions they're paying executives. It's the tens of billions we stand to lose by writing loan guarantees to construction companies. You remember when the Strandherd-Armstrong Bridge was delayed because the builder went bankrupt, right?
Yes, I do remember.
Well, the losses from that bankruptcy were on the private sector because they had to buy private sector bankruptcy insurance so that taxpayers wouldn't be on the hook if the company failed. This infrastructure bank, had it been in place, would have probably insured that project, and then all of the losses from that bankruptcy would have been on taxpayers. These loan guarantees always favor the super rich private equity investment bankers and other financial elites because they get to put the risk of their projects on the taxpayer and then keep all the profits for themselves. We should never socialize the risk and privatize the profit. Risk reward need to go together. And that's why another reason why this bank is a disaster. It should be shut down completely.
Okay. I thank you for your time this morning. Very generous with your time. Thank you, Pierre Poilievre.
Great to be with you, Rob.
Bye-bye. The MP for the riding of Carleton. Coming up next in sports with Steve Warne. Hockey's over, but there's still a lot happening in the world of sports. We'll cover it all with the producer and host of the Steve Warne Project. Next on City News.
Here at the Thirsty Maiden, we offer a variety of products. So everything from breakfast items, so it's breakfast sandwiches and scones, which have become a staple item here at the cafe. We have an assortment of pastries and cakes and desserts. So we're really big on our dessert bar, which a lot of people come here for. And of course, our delicious coffee beverages. So we do offer not your typical lattes, things like a chocolate banana coconut latte, cinnamon coconut, which is my favorite, and our take on even a pumpkin spice, which we add nutmeg and a dash of cayenne in just to give it a bit of a kick. When you start a business, you don't factor in all the things that could go wrong. You think anything that goes wrong, any failure, is got to be something on your shoulders. You didn't market right, you're carrying the wrong products, you didn't price your items correctly, all the things, right? But when this pandemic began, things going through my brain were I didn't factor in a pandemic. And we were just starting to grow. We were about to blow up, and I think I spent 2 days crying. And then I shut my business down for, I think, a period of 2 or 3 days. And just being at home during that time, I realized this is not me. Anybody that knows me knows I'm a hard worker. I don't give up, and I'm a go-getter. And I started to think, well, I should probably just start clearing out my freezers and posting and seeing who wants to buy what. And that was sort of how I built my momentum back up. I realized that there's still a large number of people that wanted to support us and were looking for the items that I had to provide. So we started there. Then I reopened literally not even 3 or 4 days after I'd closed my doors, and then started doing curbside pickups and deliveries. Started doing the deliveries myself, free deliveries to the local community, going as far as Bell's Corners and Carp as well. And that's why we're still here. This community has really kept us going a year into the pandemic. We've had a changeover of staff a couple times now, and situations change, and when you can't offer hours and hours for your employees, you don't blame them when they have to go elsewhere. So I think that's also been one of the challenges is recruiting, training, and then they leave, and then bringing in more people and recruiting. And anybody in this industry will tell you that that's something we deal with on a regular basis, whether or not COVID's in the mix or not. But more so now, because every time there's a lockdown, there's a risk of, will we make it through? And then you lay off more staff. And again, their situations and their circumstances change.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
In sports, Steve Warne is back from the Steve Warne Project. Good morning.
Morning, Rob.
Well, Steve, hockey season's over. The Habs didn't win, so we can go back to living our normal lives, cheering for the Senators and against the Montreal Canadiens, because that was awkward, let's face it, right?
Well, I got to say, I was not exactly cheering for the Montreal Canadiens. It's just in my nature to not like the Habs and not like the Leafs.
Yeah.
And so I had no problem cheering against them, but it was certainly a hell of a run.
Yeah, they had a great run. I think, the buzz about the Stanley Cup Finals is all about Kucherov, Nikita Kucherov, the outstanding player for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and his post-game news conference, right? So we have some of the highlights queued up here, ready to go. David, roll tape, please.
Media, please raise your hand if you have a question. We'll start with Joe Smith, The Athletic.
Joe, let's hear it.
How would you describe your congratulations? How would you describe your emotions right now after doing what you guys did?
I don't know what to say. It's back to back, and I couldn't sleep for 3 nights. And to be able to win this game is huge. Weissy was outstanding. MVP. I was telling him every day, Weissy, you MVP. I didn't want to go back to Montreal, but the fans in Montreal, come on. They acted like they won the Stanley Cup last game. You kidding me?
Yeah. And he's pounding beers through the whole thing, and he's topless, right? So what'd you think of that, Steve? What did you think? Because there is criticism for him in certain quarters, in a certain part of the country. There is. But
well, I mean, if you're a Montreal Canadiens fan, you saw it as totally classless, not being gracious in defeat. But I think for everybody else, it was entertaining as hell. Like, we all watch these post-game news conferences and wonder why they're even bothering.
Yeah.
Right? They're so stoic. It's all, get pucks deep, keep working hard, play as a team. Like this, you heard it there. It had everything, like humor, joy, profanity, trash talk, booze. Like if it had a car chase, Rob, or a steamy love scene, I wouldn't have been surprised. It was that good.
Yeah, because, and I've asked broadcasters, like Dean Brown, who calls the Senators. I'm like, why do you guys still do these intermission interviews with players? Because it is so Bull Durhamish, where it's like just here to help the team, hope to give 100%, and good Lord willing, we'll come out with a victory or something. It's so asinine most of the time. So that one. It's one for the ages, Steve, I think. One for the ages, right?
Well, and don't you think the NHL could use more of that? I mean, just a little controversy, things to get emotions going. I mean, Tampa and Montreal are going to face off this fall because they're back in the same division, and everybody's going to play that press conference back and then tune in to see what the Habs do. Really, it's part of why wrestling and the UFC do well. I think they create storylines, and they get people fired up with the things they do and say away from the actual games. So I think that, I'd love to see the NHL allow more of that and let these guys let their hair down once in a while. But unfortunately, I'm sure it'll go right back to the way it's always been this fall.
Well, I mean, they're even spicing up golf now. They've got this rivalry going between DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka, right? So
it's a terrific example.
Yeah, and that's the gentlemanly sport, golf, right? So anyway, what else do we have on? Are you going to well, let me ask you this. How historic is this appearance by, what's his name? Shapovalov. I'm going to mess it up. I even rehearsed it earlier this morning, but how do you say his name, Steve?
It's Denis Shapovalov.
Shapovalov. Okay. He's a Canadian. He's in the semifinals. He's against the number one player in the world, Djokovic. How historic is this, in your opinion, Steve?
Well, I think it's fantastic. I mean, it's a 22-year-old kid at the heart of this thing who really hasn't won anything against the number one player in the world. It's great for Canadian tennis. Both Shapovalov and what Felix Auger-Aliassime did, he got to the quarterfinals and finally bowed out. But to see, I mean, these guys are friends. They're young. They're exciting to watch. And it really is, it feels like we're almost at the point, maybe not today, but the passing of a torch may be happening here in both the Shapovalov and Auger-Aliassime really knocking at the door. So it's historic from that perspective, and that, beyond Milos Raonic, Canadian men's singles really hasn't had players like these. And it's going to be a terrific match. Both are such fantastic, fast, athletic players, both so good on grass, but their resumes are so opposite. I really feel like Djokovic, he'll eventually be too old, and Shapovalov will eventually hit his prime, but I'll be very surprised if that day is today, because Djokovic is still such a stud.
Yeah. The thing with men's tennis, I used to be a big fan, kind of back in the day, and I mean way back in the day. Yvonne Lendl, John McEnroe, Boris Becker days. Okay. But now the game is, I have to say, it's boring. It's a power game. It's serve and volley. Who hits it the hardest? I don't know. I'd rather watch the women's tennis, to tell you the truth. That's my own opinion of it. But,
well, certainly the women do tend to have longer rallies and such, and you're right, that is a complaint that I hear from people. But I really feel like, I think you'll be dragged back in to being a fan with these two young Canadian rising stars coming into the fold. Just as with Bianca Andreescu.
Yes.
She wins for Canada the first singles title. I guess it was last year, the U.S. Open. She's had some injury problems and hasn't really got back to form yet. But, think how exciting all that was. And I really feel like once these guys start winning Grand Slams, I feel like, people who were Canadian tennis fans back in the day, like you were, are going to be dragged right back into it.
Okay. Will you watch the Euro final on Sunday? Are you interested in that? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm all over that.
Oh, you are? Okay.
It's such a great final. Like, it's two of the absolute classics, England versus Italy. England's kind of the Toronto Maple Leafs of soccer. Haven't been to a major tournament final in 55 years.
That's right.
Yeah. And Italy has just been a great story. Like, obviously, they're both just such steeped in such great soccer history. But Italy's a great story as well, because you think about, they had never missed a World Cup, like, for 60 years, and then they missed the 2018 World Cup entirely. And so they've basically done a big rebuild of everything. Older players retiring, young guys coming in, new manager, executives asked to go away, and they're currently on a run where they've won 33 matches in a row. It's one of the great turnarounds we've ever seen in soccer. So it's going to be an amazing match on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, in England with the home field advantage, I've been saying this all week, how strange it is. 60,000 fans in the stands and not a mask in sight, Steve.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's us soon enough, for a Red Blacks game or something, All right.
We're less than a month away from the first Red Blacks game.
Yeah. Enjoy the weekend, Steve. Talk to you next week. Thank you. Yeah, from the Steve Warne Project and the Sens Nation podcast, both available on your favorite streaming platforms. That's Steve Warne. Queen's Park Week in Review, and we have this big developing story about the potential for an early move into step 3, which would seem to contradict and go against the health advice. from the science advisor from the advisory table. We'll talk about that next with our MPPs. This is City News.
Number one for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Friday, the 9th of July. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa, we've got mostly cloudy skies and 17 degrees. In Smiths Falls, it's cloudy and 17. Here's what's making news this hour. Breaking news out of Queen's Park, where the rumblings are the province is going to move to step 3 of reopening 5 days ahead of schedule, July 16th. City News Queen's Park reporter Richard Southern says some of the details point to no capacity limits for indoor dining, just distancing measures. Movie theaters, gyms, and other attractions like zoos would be at 50% capacity. For gyms and other indoor sports and other indoor events, it's 1,000 people maximum. Indoor religious services and ceremonies would have no limits, but physical distancing would be required. We're getting some details from Richard Southern, and we'll have more at the top of the hour. Provincial health officials reporting 4 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa out of 183 new cases across the province. Public Health Ontario also reporting 9 new deaths due to the virus. Elsewhere locally, Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit confirms no new cases and just 2 active cases in that region. There are no new cases for Eastern Ontario or for Renfrew County. The new national chief of the Assembly of First Nations says there must be truth before reconciliation. Roseanne Archibald used her first news conference following her election to announce she will push governments to implement all 94 calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's report. She says reparations will be an essential part of the reconciliation process. Archibald also spent several minutes outlining another one of her major priorities, making the AFN more inclusive. She is the organization's first female leader. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's a pillar of community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Okay, let's launch right into it. It's time for Queen's Park Weekend Review with our MPPs. And joining us today is the Liberal MPP. The riding is Ottawa South, but he's in Cobden, John Fraser. Good morning, John.
Good morning, Rob.
Gilles Bisson is the New Democrat. His riding is Timmins, and he's in Timmins. Good morning, Gilles.
Good morning.
Mike Schreiner is a Green Party MPP. He's also the leader of the Ontario Green Party. His riding is Guelph, and he's in the Hammer. He's in Hamilton today. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah.
Pleasure to join you.
Great to hear from all three of you. Thank you for taking the time. So, this morning, when I came into work, I was looking at one of the news sites, and this is one of the stories. Headlined, Ontario, I'm quoting here, Ontario absolutely not ready to move into step 3, scientific director says. Okay? Absolutely not ready. And this is what it says in the story. The scientific director of the Ontario Science Advisory Table says the province is absolutely not ready to move into the next step of the reopening plan due to the spread of the more transmissible Delta variant. Dr. Peter Uni described the COVID-19 variant as a completely different beast. And Dr. Uni goes on, quote, "We need to wait now. Be patient, not get ahead of ourselves. It's an absolute no-go to rush this." Okay, so that was in the news early this morning. I'm talking around 6 o'clock this morning. I saw that. Hours later, mere hours later. It's not even lunchtime yet. 680 News in Toronto has confirmed step 3 will start July 16th, 5 days earlier than expected. Sources tell us there will be no capacity limits for indoor dining, just distancing, gyms, movie theaters, museums, zoos, 50% capacity. So we have the scientific director of the Ontario Science Advisory Table say absolutely not ready to move into step 3. Step 3 will start early. Okay. Mike Schreiner, why don't you take that one first? Mike, go ahead. What do you think about that? Is that a contradiction here?
You know what? I understand the desire to open. Everyone wants us to reopen, businesses, people. But the bottom line is every time the Premier has failed to listen to the Science Advisory Table and reopened early, it's led to a worst wave of the pandemic and forced another lockdown. And I absolutely do not want another lockdown. And so I would urge the Premier, listen to the scientists, follow their advice, do this right so we don't have another lockdown, and provide additional financial support to struggling small businesses by providing a third round of funding, the Ontario Business Support Grant, and expanding the eligibility to cover those businesses who are falling through the cracks.
Okay. Gilles Bisson.
What could possibly go wrong? Like, we've been down this road before, as Mike has pointed out. The Premier chooses when to listen to science advice when it's politically expedient for him. I think what's going on now is that the Tories have been, pretty beat up bad in their ridings in regards to some of the decisions this government's made about the lockdowns. There are people that are opposed, and we all understand that, but a lot of these measures are necessary, and the government and Mr. Ford are deciding, let's do what's politically expedient rather than doing what's scientifically prudent. And I think there's a real danger we could end up back in another lockdown unnecessarily. And you just need to look at Israel, UK, and other countries that have had a lot of success vaccinating their population, high percentage of the population with both vaccines. And this variant is now starting to make the rounds again, and the numbers are going up in the UK and in Israel. So I think there's some evidence out there to make the medical community feel the way that they are and make such statements as absolutely not when you look at what's going on with this new Delta variant.
John Fraser.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with, both Mike and Gilles. Look, the science table has been pretty much bang on throughout this pandemic. And when we've listened to them in this last, coming through this last lockdown and coming out, we've done well. When the government hasn't listened to them, then we've ended up in lockdowns. And so, I would encourage the Premier to take that advice. And if the government's decided they're going to open up earlier now, it would be good to understand what underpins that. What's the evidence? What's the science? Why are we seeing this kind of, 6 o'clock in the morning? We got to be really careful to, hey, we're ready to go. It just, we need to see clearly why that's okay, because we've been through this enough times already that another lockdown is not going to be good.
Okay.
For us.
Okay. How much better does it need to be, though?
Well, I think what you
we have.
need to do...
She'll just hold on a second.
Okay? Oh, I thought you were.
All right, I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here. Okay.
Okay. I thought you were.
Here in Ottawa, 3 campuses of the Ottawa Hospital, Queensway, Carleton, Montfort, 5 hospital campuses. Nobody's in the hospital with COVID-19, city of 1 million people. Nobody's in the hospital. Nobody's in the hospital. We have a province-wide case count of 183. A test positivity rate of less than 1%. All of these numbers, if you think back, April, May, looked nothing like this. And on the vaccination front, I think we would all agree, we have really picked up the pace. We're almost at 80% province-wide. We're above 80% in Ottawa. And we're almost 53% fully vaccinated. Greatly improved. 12.1 million adults in total. 6.3 million adults in total have been fully vaccinated. What are we waiting for? By these metrics, we shouldn't even be in step 2. We shouldn't even be waiting this length of time to move into step 3. We should be in step 3 already.
Well, listen, first of all, the scientific community is pretty unanimous on this, and that you need to have at least 2.5 weeks after a lockdown to be able to really measure what's going on. Number 2, the reasons our number went down is because we went into a lockdown. Nobody likes it. I don't like a lockdown. Rob, I know you don't like it, neither does Mike or John.
Right.
But the reality is that we were locked down hard for quite a long time, and that's why the numbers went down. Yes, our vaccination rates have gone up, and that really is helping. But we can't lose sight of our eye on the prize here. The prize is to get to where we have this under control, that we have no longer any lockdowns and as minimal amount of restrictions as possible. I think there's a real danger, and that's what the scientific community is telling us. If you jump the gun on this, you may get burned.
Mike Schreiner?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And the other thing I would add is that not only do you need 2 to 3 weeks after you ease restrictions to see how that's going to affect the numbers, also for people to be, when they're vaccinated, need a couple weeks to be fully immunized. And so somebody like myself, who I got my second jab on last Monday of this week, I'm still a week to 10 days away from being fully vaccinated, and a lot of Ontarians are in that situation. And we have seen in other countries, UK and Israel, as Gilles said, that felt they were good, thought they were good, the numbers were looking good. They eased restrictions, and now you're seeing case counts go up. And from my perspective, if we can wait another week to make sure we really have this under control, I'm okay to wait a week if it means we can avoid another lockdown, because I don't want another lockdown.
No, nobody wants another lockdown. I don't know if people would tolerate another lockdown, quite frankly. Yeah. John, John, do you want to weigh in there, John?
Yeah, the sign. I agree. Again, I agree with what Mike and Jill said about 2 weeks for vaccinations, and ending a public health measure to know that A, you're fully immunized, and B, that the whatever you did had effect. People are really frustrated. So, there's a lot of pressure to open things up. And the reality is, what the science is saying is, the risk we may take about opening up a few days early, 4 or 5 days early, could be greater than the reward. So I think it's a prudent thing to do. It's not easy. Look, people are frustrated.
John.
But when we haven't followed the science, when the government hasn't listened to the science, we've seen the results of that. And that, the people who are giving this advice don't have a vested interest, and they don't. They're like everybody else. They don't want to lock
I know,
down.
John, but let's think back to the very beginning of this, okay? And what was the goal of these lockdowns and restrictions and curfews and all the rest of it? Flatten the curve, right? Yeah. Surge capacity in our hospitals. We don't want our hospitals to be overwhelmed. We don't want our ICUs overwhelmed. All of these things.
Yeah, well,
we're not even close. There's nobody in the hospital, John.
Yeah,
nobody.
That's the point. It's not to have.
So what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for?
We don't want anybody in the hospital. So that's part of the reason. There's nobody in the hospital right now, which means the measures we took were good, and they had the effect. We don't want to start putting people back into hospital. That's the point. If you take a look, and Mike would know this, and Mike may want to comment on this, is in Wellington, in Kitchener-Waterloo, they've been behind us because they got hit by the Delta variant, before they had enough vaccinations in place, right? Okay. So we see how they're what I don't know, Mike.
Yeah, hey, Mike, what happened down there in KW? What happened down there?
You know what? My neighbors had an outbreak with the Delta variant, and this variant, it spread so rapidly and so quickly that it spread faster than anybody expected. And, we were seeing that in a few other locations in the province. I looked just north of Waterloo region in the Owen Sound, Bruce Grey area, similar situation. And it just shows you this Delta variant is a tough one. It will spread fast, way faster than the original variants. And that's why I'm saying, listen to the scientists, wait a week, make sure we have this thing under control so we can open up and stay open.
Yeah, and the only other point I would want to make to this is that we know from the experience of other countries and our own and the scientific community, just because you've been vaccinated twice doesn't mean to say you can't contract the disease and pass it on to somebody else. Okay. That's the other thing here that is really worrisome on the part of everybody. So jumping ahead of the queue and trying to get this done real fast may end up putting us further back than we need to, and I think it's unprudent.
All right, we'll be right back. I want to talk about the wage increase for PSWs, vaccine passports, and just events taking place in your own ridings, your own parts of Ontario this summer that were maybe canceled last summer but are making a return. When we come back, Queen's Park Weekend Review. This is City News.
My name is Pamela Caillou. I'm a local artist. I'm Métis, and the heritage derives from Algonquin and Huron background. That comes from way, way back from the 1600s. I was trained in school classically, like we studied the masters like Picasso, Michelangelo, Van Gogh, and so you'd have to say it's quite different, my style. What I've done is taken the skills that were taught to me by traditional painting and incorporated that with the Indigenous heritage. My art pieces incorporate the energy and spirit of the Mother Earth in pretty much every single one of them, because I want people to realize, even though we might think we are the masters of the domain here on the planet, that is not the case. It's the Mother Earth that's providing a balance and our causes to live and whatnot. And it's just to always see her and remember her and respect her. Well, I try to keep my style different because there are like a handful of Canadian artists that are really well known, like Norval Morrisseau and whatnot, but it's been done. So I kind of want to stay away from the pack, and that's what makes my artwork a little more unique. But at the same time, if you're looking at it, you do know it's Indigenous and you do know it's the woodland style. I usually start by coming up with an idea, which would be, let's say, 4 days. Well, it depends what's inspiring me at the time. It could be a lot of trees, it could be water, it could be the medicine wheel. I would choose a subject and try to really incorporate what it is I want people to see from that. So then from there, I have sketchbooks and I do little sketches of everything because the canvas is expensive. So you don't want to start something and have to throw it away. And then from there, I go on to the bigger piece on the canvas. Once I have on my sketches the direction I want to take my artwork in. I chose a lot of vibrant colors for the pieces because if somebody is willing to make the commitment to have my piece of work in their home, I would actually like them to come home after a long, hard day, and some days aren't so great, to look at something that's very joyful.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
We're back with Queen's Park Weekend Review. Mike Schreiner, Green Party MPP. Gilles Bisson, New Democrat. John Fraser, Liberal. This week, Doug Ford said he is committed to maintaining the wage increase brought in for personal support workers, $3 an hour wage increase. We have the audio. Play that clip, please. Yep.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So we're the first government to come along and say that they deserve more money. I've said it publicly. We gave them a $3 an hour bump in pay. We're going to make sure we make that 100%. I know it was temporary, but they're going to have a $3 increase in pay. I've always said, folks, PSWs are overworked, underpaid, and they deserve every single penny times 10. So we're going to keep that in place, the $3 an hour pay for them.
That was Monday in North Bay. What will it take to make this wage increase permanent? Mike Schreiner.
Well, we need the government to stand behind their words. First of all, the original pandemic pay increase was $4, so the permanent one should be $4. But the fact that Ford staff seemed to walk back those comments almost immediately afterwards make me worried that those are just empty promises. So we need a firm commitment to permanent pandemic pay increases. We need to ensure that PSWs can work full-time with benefits. Many of them are forced to work part-time. And for PSWs who are in the home care sector, we need to ensure that their travel between seeing people is paid as well. Because the lack of that pay means that many of them have, significantly reduced wages. So living wages, full-time pay, full-time work with benefits, have their travel paid, and also make sure we have good working conditions where we have fully staffed up, particularly when it comes to long-term care homes, so PSWs are not underpaid and overworked.
All right, Gilles Bisson.
Well, listen, what it's going to take is probably a change of government to really make this happen. We had the problem that's existed for a long time. It's one that Mr. Ford inherited, so, let's be clear about that. And it was under the former government that they created this agency in order to allow PSWs to be hived off and work part-time here, work part-time there. So this has been a long-standing problem. And we need to address this because PSWs are the backbone of our healthcare system, both within home care, within hospitals, within long-term care, congregate living, etc. And we need to make sure that these people are paid adequately so that we can attract people into the field to give the type of service that we need.
John Fraser.
Well, just I'll correct the Premier. In the last mandate, the government raised PSW wages by $4 an hour. Pandemic pay was $4 an hour. It ended last August. It took 6 weeks to give PSWs $1 less, $3. And it's been extended 4 times. A temporary wage increase. If I was a PSW, I'd be wondering, is he serious? The Premier seemed to commit to it again, but then his office said, well, we can't just snap our fingers. Well, the Premier snaps his fingers and Charles McVety gets written into legislation. Or the notwithstanding clause needs to be invoked immediately. So it's like a house on fire. Look, the Premier's just got to stop talking and start doing. Just don't say what you think people want to hear. And that's what's happening. And if I was a PSW, I went, last time they took us from $4 to $3, and now they keep extending us. Is it going to be $2 instead of $3? Like, why are they taking so long? It doesn't make any sense. Okay. If you're going to make a commitment, like he said he did, that just got walked back, come good on it. It's been almost a year. Come on. It's not that hard.
Okay. We only have, 2.5 minutes. Okay, so we'll talk about vaccine passports another time. In each of your ridings, because we have, Mike is down there kind of west of Toronto representing Guelph, a lovely part of the province. Gilles is a longtime Northern Ontario MP, and John and I are from the Ottawa area, of course. In each of your ridings, what is an event or activity that could not be held last summer because of the pandemic that you will be happy to see return this summer? Mike Schreiner.
Well, one of the ones I'm looking forward to this weekend is the Potter's Market that happens every year in Royal City Park. It'll be happening this weekend. It was canceled last year, and I'm looking forward to getting out and supporting some of the many wonderful local artists we have here in Guelph. Though I will say that most of the summer events in Guelph that were canceled last year were canceled again this summer because it takes a while to plan these events, which is exactly why we need clear guidelines from the province on how these events can reopen safely.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, same here in Timmins is that a lot of the events that weren't last year are not going to be this year because you don't have enough lead time to organize.
Right.
But I do miss, there's a lot of really great events across the riding. I used to love the Cap Lumberjack Festival and the old riding up in Kapuskasing, always something worth going to. We used to have Stars and Thunder here in Timmins, which was a great big 3-day, music fest that went on in the city. So all of those things are not going to be happening. Obviously, they're too big to organize.
Okay. John?
Well,
a lot of our big local events.
Well, here it didn't get canceled last year because most things that were canceled last year still canceled this year because of the timing.
Yeah.
But the Lebanese Festival is still going on again this year. It's a bit different like it was last year. It's a really big thing in Ottawa South.
Oh yeah, I
just saw. I think they're coming up the 20th, 21st. And I encourage everybody to go. It's a great community effort, and it is a really big thing in Ottawa South. And I'm glad that it's back.
Hey, is it one of the big things every year for a politician is the plowing match? There's no plowing match, is there, this year?
That is a really good question.
The international plowing match.
Yeah,
that's a great question. And you know what? I should know the answer to it because their headquarters are in Guelph.
Get on that, Mike. Get on that. Okay.
So, Rob, I'll have an answer for you by next Friday.
All right. Okay. Yeah. No, I love the plowing match. It's a great one. Yeah. Okay. I love to see anytime politicians are in charge of
manure
farm equipment. Manure farm equipment. I'm all up for that. Have a wonderful weekend. I thank you again. Bye-bye.
Good weekend, everyone.
Mike Schreiner, the MPP for Guelph, Green Party. New Democrat, Gilles, Bisson, John Fraser from Ottawa South. Liberal. Rob Snow back on Monday. Sam Laprade standing by. This is City News.
The Rob Snow Show.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV.